Hello, everybody, and welcome to Aurorum Thronekeeper, Session 0, Laszlo, the Peacekeeper. What's up, Josh?
Hello, how are you?
I am spectacular, sir. I am very excited to record these Session Zeros, because, it's a fun little thing to do. It gives us, an opportunity to kind of like meet your character kind of like individually in the world without being impacted by the other players' interactions, the world interactions with you and whatnot. Kind of gives you a moment to kind of like learn who you are and how you want to play yourself in the future. So, are you excited to do this?
Oh yeah, I'm really excited. I'm happy that I'm safe from Steve for this one session.
Not just this one session, for 3 sessions. And
Okay, I'm safe.
And just so you know, Steve is actually, I think, a 70-30 split. Steve is usually a good one. Joey, however, and
Oh,
Anno.
well,
Oh,
I
and
hate
Anno.
fire.
Listen, listen. Joey, Anno are going to have fun with you. And how many times have you argued with Green?
Never. Green, you are a great person. I'm playing a paladin.
Literally, I mean, point down. That's Peacekeeper. You just gotta.
I'm a peacekeeper. We're the good guys.
The good guys, exactly. So it's important to note that that his character is a peacekeeper. So Green, you will love his character. He's a kind person. He does no harm, no bad. And Steve would have no reason to. Why would Silencio have any reason to be upset with him, right? Exactly.
I wouldn't know.
No. All right, cool. And everybody else doesn't matter. I mean, well, at least you. Actually, we do know one more thing. Sinatra Girl will always drop the aids and whatnot for you.
Oh no, she won't. She is mean as fuck to me on my channel. She clips everything that I do wrong, everything, and I love her for it because she's my little clip queen. I have to be careful how I say that.
I'm sorry. What queen? Moving on.
Clip queen.
Get a little interference, but I cannot wait to see how many like curses that Sinatra Girl and maybe Snowell, because she's a bit of a Kappa person as well. Snowell might do for you as well. So, anyways, so without further ado, let's kind of like jump into the campaign, so we can kind of get to meet your character and what's going on.
Mm.
So, I think it's fun getting to know them, and we'll kind of like describe them as we go. So, first things first, your character and a little bit of background. So I think it's important to note that your character has not a young man, though certainly young for his, certainly has many years left to him in this world. He's not a young man by any stretch of the imagination. He has dedicated much of his life studying the arts of the arcane, getting to know kind of like his fields of study, getting to know magics in and out, how it is they are able to kind of be embedded into other items, how it is that those kind of like permanence effects can kind of like always be around, so on and so forth. It's kind of like what he focused on top of the fact that he did go to school to become a peacekeeper. He is a part of the Arcane Congress in the peacekeepers category, meaning that it is literally his responsibility to go into areas where there could be concerns and so on and so forth, and to bring down those concerns so that their peace can be kept. But honestly, what peacekeepers' biggest responsibility is, beyond of course trying to maintain society on the smaller problems of immediate conflicts, is actually peacekeepers' real concern is to keep aside the chaos that naturally exists throughout Aurorum because of the magic that's there. See, one of the things that a lot of people outside of the Arcane Congress don't actually realize, they see magic as this wonderful, beautiful thing that you're able to interact with, master, so on and so forth, and use to benefit yourself and those around you, or to bring harm if you're a terrible person. Rayron, is that you're able to, is that if you use magic of a certain tier or caliber, and they of course break down their categories, childishly or without the appropriate like kind of safeguards or concerns, you can actually cause kind of like rips in the world, kind of allow chaos to take reign, which can have some huge devastating effects. Now, luckily, the Arcane Congress came into being many years ago, many gnomish generations ago. So we're talking like, what, 2,000 years ago, perhaps 1,000 years ago, whatever it was. And it's really helped to curb these kind of concerns that did actually exist in the world prior to their inception and in the early years of their inception. They've really taken hold in guiding all these other societies to properly use and learn magics to the best of their ability to stop these rips from happening. So you yourself happen to be a peacekeeper of a certain category. You're actually an adroit, a tier 3 adroit peacekeeper, which means that you actually are pretty capable when it comes to the use of arcane arts. And you're on that, you've been in the adroit tier for a while, even in this tier of adroit, my apologies, for a while. And you actually are kind of on that cusp of, if the next few years go well for you, you might actually be accepted into a Savant Academy, allowing you to train for that higher tier of magic, that greater understanding. But when that happens, this is where kind of like the walls really go up. And you really have to be very careful on the kind of spells that you use, where you use them, because this is where magic starts to get a little wonky, right? But anyways, like I said, you've been serving the Peacekeepers, specifically Arcane Congress, for what, 100 years?
100 years at this point.
100 years, yeah. And you've done many things for them. Like I said, you've been studying enchantments and what it is that they're able to do, and so on and so forth, right? So when you are, make sure I'm looking at things the correct way, right? Yeah. So when you are been working as the Peacekeepers for some time, kind of like your job with them, though of course you do have to be trained in literally keeping peace. One of the big things that you focus on is literally going around and finding artifacts that have a significance magically, maybe to the culture or to your culture or whatever it is, and studying them, learning them, cataloging them to make sure that they're safe, so on and so forth. But specifically, one of the biggest concerns that the Arcane Congress has is when experiments go wrong. Because sometimes when an experiment goes wrong, or when an accident happens, or something's created with like a kind of a glitch in it, it can make these concerns, even at lower tiers of magic, cause big rippling effects. Unfortunately, the Arcane Congress is not innocent from making mistakes along the way. They do their best to have these safeguards, but the mistakes that they make can be kind of grand. One of the biggest mistakes they ever made was they actually created a magical beast that's kind of like almost like an echo or a mockery of their own people, called the Sill. So unfortunately, the Sill are this kind of like devious creature that literally takes magic and twists it. Takes all the things that others have worked on, and they kind of like bend or twist that magic to have kind of like negative effects. It's very dangerous. And you know that occasionally what the Arcane Congress would do is they would actually send probes into we're going to call it nation, that they have called Silencio.
Nation.
The nation, we'll just use that phrase, that they have called Silencio, to try to procure some of these artifacts, whatever they have, and try to get some of these specimens so they can do a little bit of research on them to try to figure out how to solve the problem. The issue is that, unfortunately, the way that they twist magic in such dangerous ways makes us actually pretty good at safeguarding, so there's never been any actual true puncture past their defenses since they really put them up so much time ago. Rumor is that they're doing another insurgence, and that your peacekeeper, what's the word I'm looking for? Like regiment?
Squadron? Battalion? Group?
Squadron. Your squad. Your peacekeeper squad is going to be kind of moving in on that. That's the rumor that you've been hearing. So it's no surprise to you that when you get called by your commanding officer, my apologies, not commanding officer, the member of the Arcane Congress that you report to, she's just kind of like your overseer, that literally oversees your entire squadron. She's the one that leads it. Is going to be Tier 3 Savant, Trillia Loxham. Now, this is somebody who is like a solid 100, 150 years older than you. You would never be so rude to ask her age, of course. She's been dedicated into the Arcane Congress for many, many, many years. I mean, she joined it at a pretty young age, even compared to you. Joined at a pretty young age and has always done very well. She is diehard and dedicated to the cause of the Arcane Congress and is always looking to, well, she's been a peacekeeper since very early in her career, whereas somebody like you had to earn your way into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Savant Loxam is somebody that you, of course, have the highest respect for. So when she calls you into her office to speak to her, you can imagine what her office looks like, right? Of the schools that the Academy offers, the Congress, my apologies, offers, she happens to be of it's the Yavi school that she
So the
happens
same
to
as
be.
me.
So the same
Same as
school
I.
that you studied in, exactly, which is literally one of the reasons why you got recruited to being under her is because she was kind of one of those, sometimes academies will have people that come in and give speeches to kind of like give bolster up students and whatnot. At one point in time, I can imagine she came in and gave a speech that literally kind of spoke to your character in such a way. After speech, kind of like a Q&A, and then kind of like open forum, maybe at a local tavern kind of situation, the two of you would have made a minor relationship. And I don't mean that kind of relationship, but
Yeah.
more of the mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah, definitely.
And so she kind of took you under her wing. She's a bit of a soft spot for you, which is why you've had a wonderful career. Yeah. Moving on. When she calls you into her office as a member of the Yavi school, the kind of stuff that she has there is genuinely just very, very, very beautiful. I mean, the number of crystallized skulls that she has on display off on a shelf to the side, the tomes that she has as you walk into the room. There's that almost slightly rotting, musty smell of an old book that just no matter how much magic you put on it, you can't quite preserve it the right way because of how old and whatnot it is. That to some people might find it a bit off-putting, but somebody of your background would be like, oh my god, this is such a beautiful smell.
I'm like always tempted to do detect magic, but I would never do it. Like that's like an invasion of privacy in her office. I just like, oh, I want to so bad.
And so it's one of those things where you can imagine that like walking into it, you always appreciate just the wonderful things. And it's fun because you don't get to go in there very often, maybe like every other year or so. But every time you do, there's always like, it's never the same thing. Some items leave, other items come in, some things move slightly. It's almost like she's always like changing out her collection. Raises questions that you're never permitted to ask, or at least propriety would say don't ask these questions, right? So anyways, she welcomes you into her office, and when you are coming in, because she invited you, you just open the door and go in yourself. When you go in there, she's not sitting behind her desk or anything like that. She actually would be sitting off to the side over, relaxing in two chairs that she has turned slightly towards her own fire. Now, when I say fire, it's technically is a fireplace that's sitting there, but the fireplace doesn't have a flue, because a flue is not very efficient for heating, because you're to allow cold air in, even as you have hot air trying to push out, and you're wasting hot air. So it's a flueless flame with a magical flame, probably evocated flame that's sitting there, that's allowing to kind of like throw off the heat to keep the place warm. She's sitting over by there reading one of these old books. You have no idea what the title is or even what the language is, of course, but you can see that she's sitting there. So as you like open the door and walking in, always prompt with timing. She hears the door snap shut behind her, and you can see that she, like, as you're snapping the door shut, she's closing the book next to her and placing it on like a little table that's sitting by her chair. And she'll kind of like look over at you, and she'll say, Laszlo, please come, have a seat. And gestures towards the seat that's kind of across from her.
Of course, Savant. And he'll go and sit down.
When you go and you sit across from her, she's sitting comfortably, dressed comfortably. The colors that she generally wears are usually a bit of darker tones, like deep purples, ones that like if the lighting's too dark, you might imagine would actually be black, but it's bright enough in the room you can actually see it's these deep purples with bits of like other kind of shimmer and whatnot mixed into them. It's one of those things where you being, again, very well versed in what this Arcane Congress is, you can see that literally depicts to you that she is somebody that is of the savant tier of actually specifically not just the Yavi school, but specifically necromancy is her primary field of study. But then the accents and colors that she has around her lets you know that even though necromancy is her primary school of study, that she also has an underschool for her for abjuration as well. So abjuration magic as well. So some protections, right? So anyways, so when you sit there across from her, she looks to you and says, Laszlo, as we both are, no, my apologies, she says, Adroit, as we both are very familiar with the rumor mills as they churn in the Congress tend to inform others of what's going on long before they should be known. Tell me, what is it that you've heard thus far?
That we're gonna do an aggressive attack on the abominations.
Of course. We can't even keep silent what goes on within our own Congress. How is it that we're supposed to keep the abominations quiet to what it is that we say? They twist our magics, sometimes bend them to their will. They could very likely be listening to exactly what it is that we're discussing right now. Nonetheless, lips do slip. Why is it you think that we're going in here?
My assumption would be for artifacts. That's usually where I'm involved.
Your assumption is, of course, correct. Obviously, we'll be mobilizing the entire squad to make this happen. But, Laszlo, I've called you in here for a reason. We're not just simply going in and making an insurgence like we've done many times in the past. We have alliterative intel on where something of genuine significance might be at a location that we think we can actually make a true puncture through the defenses. And you're kind of going to be running point on this one. Certainly not leading the rest of the squad. They have their tasks. That's where I'll be. But for the detection of the actual artifacts themselves, potentially even collecting them yourself. But because of the significance of what it is that you're going to be doing, you're going to actually be splintering off from the rest of your group. You're going to be entering slightly separately from them. I need you to go in with people that you can trust, people that you feel as though you are, if you give them a command, they are going to listen to your command, unflinching, unquestioning. They will react, and then perhaps inquire later. We need somebody that's, because of your studies, correct me if I'm wrong, but you focused on evocation with a minor in enchantment, correct?
Yes, Savant.
You need somebody that's going to be able to detect their twisted, their distorted, and honestly, disgusting magics. A diviner. Somebody that is kind of a up-and-coming member of the Hrivi school. Do you have anybody that you personally know that you think you can trust?
I know one, a friend of mine, Halen. He's a diviner. He should promise. Yes. I don't think he's ever. I mean, just like me, I've never been directly in combat like that. I've always supported the combat.
Yes, but you've been there. You've had to fling a spell or two, which is why you've studied what you've studied. Granted, more for the defensive aspect, the decomposition aspect of evocation as opposed to the actual combative aspect of it. I understand. You've been there. You're saying that this, what was his name again?
Halen.
You see she kind of like falls into herself for a moment, almost as if she's kind of like searching deep inside of her own memory, and then you can kind of like see this gloss over in her eyes as she seems to recall. You're actually familiar with what it is that she's doing. There are types of magics, if you're in the lower tier of divination, allows one to almost like search within their own mind, to recall to recall memories that otherwise could have been lost. She very likely just did this simple incantation before you, allowing her to call forth all the memories she has of this name. And she says, "Oh, Halen. Unless I'm mistaken, he's never actually officially received combat training."
No, Savant.
But you believe that he is, under your command, somebody who would unquestionably do exactly as you ask?
I do believe that he would do anything I ask. I don't know how he might question some things, but if I ask him, I think he'll do them.
She nods. Now I understand that whenever you are in the fields, you never have anybody that is directly under command, that you do have assistants that will give you aid if and when you need it. that fall under my command or whoever else might be overseeing the operation. However, when you are off the field and inside of your laboratories, how many follow under your commands when you're in your day-to-day routines?
Oh goodness, I don't know. I don't know how big the labs would be that I would work in. Honestly, I would.
Yep.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Honestly, yeah.
So I was going to say, for your tier, my apologies. For your tier, it could be upwards a score, like upwards 20 people. But when that's the case, it might be a handful of low, like tier 1 adroits, but mostly neophytes would be what you're doing. So these are like lower, like you're kind of like lower to mid management is what it is here.
Okay.
And
so I would say like probably like 12 then, like because you know
average,
as an average-ish, I would say about 12, and I would assume 2 of them would be adroits that are just like tier 1 or something like that, and then the rest being neophytes.
Yep. So you say about a dozen with a couple of adroits mixed in there. So she nods and says, "That's appropriate for when you're in for someone of your rank. But if you ever hope to go back to training, if you ever hope to improve your position within the Arcane Congress, you're going to need a little bit more experience. And I think having only one under your commands when you're in the middle of an operation perhaps won't be enough of an example for you. Perhaps you need a second. We need somebody that's going to be able to defend you. Somebody from the Daelric school, an abjurer. Do you know of anybody, or is this somebody I'm going to have to appoint for you?"
I would take any advisement and aid that you would provide. I'm not very confident with the members of the school. I don't know them very well.
Of course, you did not do any of your training there past your neophytes pass through, did you?
No, I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. That's why we have our program. This is why we try to mix people when they get further up in the Congress. It's important to get familiar with other people's magics. I do have somebody in mind. He's a bit stoic, a bit stern, but he listens. However, he also commands. He himself is also trying to gain position within the Congress. I'll make sure he knows that you're running point, unless there is anything, of course, that he is directly ordered to do otherwise. Understand?
Yes, Savant.
You're nervous. I can see it. Your palms. They give you away every time.
Yes, I'm sorry. It seems this is an extremely big deal. It seems this is a goal that we've been striving for, and I would hate to make any mistakes.
I appreciate your nervousness. It means that you're taking the gravity, what this is, as seriously as it deserves. Again, I appreciate that. But I've already suggested this to you before, and I'm getting sick of suggesting things to you. But you need to go back to the school and visit the professor that you best had a relationship with. Ask them to take care of your hands for you. They can kill them ever so slightly and give away your tells. Other people don't need to know that you're sweating.
Yes, ma'am.
We leave in 72 hours. What?
That's horrible. Okay.
We leave in 72 hours. I expect you to be prepared, and I expect you to speak with your friend and keep him posted on what's going on. If you think that there's any degree of training that you can give him, give it to him. And please, aside from speaking to him, let's keep our lips a little bit pursed.
Of course.
I expect no less. And with that, she'll reach down and pick up her book, and she kind of picks back open. Her fingers kind of back to where she was, and goes back to reading whatever she was reading before.
Stand up, try to take a quick peek at the room again. All right.
Actually, if you want to take a peek at the room, you're actually welcome to do so. Could you do me a favor and just roll me a perception check, see if there's anything that you notice inside?
Okay.
So honestly, it's one of those things where when you look around, you kind of see, as I've described beforehand, things are different than they were last time that you were welcome inside of here. But nothing really kind of jumps out at you. It's literally as you're walking past her, and you imagine her book eyes are down in there. Yeah, she doesn't see me looking. When you look at the desk, you can actually see that on her desktop itself, it already had your file literally sitting inside there, and you can actually see, because you know how files, you can stack them up like evenly, or they can be like slightly slanted, like almost like fanned out. You can actually see like 2 files down from yours is actually your droid friend. The hell's his name? Halen is actually his files are like 2 files down underneath yours, sitting there.
I was played.
Yeah, it was one of those. She kind of expected. You froze. Are you there, Josh? That was weird. You like froze like this for a minute. You're like, it was super weird. Did you lose it for a second?
Yeah. You froze too.
Yeah, you said I was played, and then it froze for like 3 seconds, and you're good. Anyway, so yeah, she's like, so yeah, she has that file or whatever, and it was not necessarily played, but maybe just knew. And well, those other names you maybe noticed, though, maybe have known them too, but that one jumped out at you, kind of caught your attention. Like, oh shit. So anyways, you leave the room, of course, and shut the door kind of quietly behind you, and you go off. I imagine you go and you speak to Halen, and they are, of course, very excited about the situation, nervous, excited, but they're like that friend that's been asking to, like, I don't know, think of a hobby. Maybe you like going shooting, right? And you have a friend that's really wanted to go shooting, has been talking about it like fucking 4 years, and then finally you bring them the first time. They're kind of like too excited. And you're like, dude, just play.
You're like, take it down. You're ruining it for me. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take it down a notch. So they're like really excited, whatever it is. But then as like the actual day comes, really, really nervous. So when
I would actually do what she says, by the way, in that, if I had time.
Oh, would you?
Yeah, if she recommended it, she's an important person in my life.
Sure.
So yeah.
Let's see if you actually do have time to go and have something like that taken care of. So you would actually go back to your school now. Where are we? Eustace.
Houston. We're in Houston.
I think that it's so hard to see the map because it's only so big.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the name of the city is Demi, in the north eastern region of Eustace, over near the mountain ranges that kind of get closer to Tazian.
Yeah, I see it.
Because clearly Tazian would be a place that you would go to get a lot of like knowledge and whatnot from. So Demi is a place where you would generally have spent some time. Unfortunately, your school. Where's your school? You are Yavi. Yavi would be. Just making sure I have this correct for you. Actually, you could do that because Yavi is, again, I can't really see the name there, unfortunately. But you see at the top end of Eustace, that one that's not on the actual coast, the one that's just next to it because of an N. That's actually, it makes perfect sense. That's literally where your school would be, evocation and necromancy. So you would actually, if you leave early to where it is that you're being told that you need to gather to for your, where you're going to be shipping out from, because you get kind of like that information, like the briefing or whatever, you could actually potentially go there to your school and do that. So I would allow you to attempt. Do me a favor, and when you actually swing by the school, let's not have this be a big RP thing, actually roll me a persuasion check to try to convince your former person to do it. And mind you, you're actually not somebody that's focused on necromancy as a major or a minor. And more than that, you actually, how many necromancy spells do you really know?
Oh, none.
0, right?
Yeah.
So you actually probably did not have that as a strong forte for yours. So unfortunately, because you like literally are not a necromancer at all, you're going to be rolling this with disadvantage.
Okay. I would name drop my servant, if that helped any.
Hold on, name drop that she specifically sent you to do this?
Yeah, just say that she believes that this would improve my capabilities as a peacekeeper. It would lessen the chance of my weaknesses being identified.
So I will say that because of the fact that you're name dropping her, that could have potentially effects in the future with you with the Arcane Congress, but I will allow you to upgrade that from a dis to a regular.
So my hands are soaking, right? And I'm just like, I say that, and I'm just like, yes, it seems like an appropriate thing to cast these spells on, yes. If you see it appropriate,
With a dead stare, as you can imagine, these people have, because people that kind of like this higher up in the necromancy school, you know how like Botox makes people not look normal? They make people look like their faces like they're perfectly still, but like they're still able to kind of talk, but like there's like no motion here. You can imagine that that's kind of what this person looks like. They literally kill part of their face to always look the same, right? So there's kind of like that, maybe a little bit more expression because magic's better than bacteria being squirted into your face. But literally their response to you is along the lines of, "You're beyond hope."
Yes. Just like that.
It's funny. I love how it like flung across the table and smashed that 17. So unfortunately, it doesn't really work out in your favor. You name drop, like that's nice. And then of course you're gonna head over to, like I said, that coastal city that's there. The reason for that being, excuse me, I got a yawn.
It's Yondis. That's the town.
So when you, the reason why you're heading out of that coast is because you learn pretty quickly where you're actually going. All those times that you guys tried to smash into Silencio, not necessarily your squad, but other squads have tried to smash into Silencio to try to do any form of dents, to try to keep the peace, and to destroy any abominations and whatnot that may have come as the result of poor arcane experiments, twisting of magic, so on and so forth. Unfortunately, like I said beforehand, the defenses have not really worked. So the reason why this time it's actually going to work out fairly well is because the Arcane Congress is working in union with Tasiandale. So the Tasian military is actually offering some of their best ships that they have. They're quieter, faster ships to try to get you not to the mainland body of Silencio, but actually to a recently discovered island that is off the northern coast of Silencio. See, what's important to note about there is that nobody knew that island was theirs. Actually, not even necessarily everybody knew that island existed. It was recently discovered by a few sailors that went off the coast there. You inevitably learn that that's actually kind of a lie. Apparently, Tasiandale has known about the island for some time, and they've actually been trading with the Sill for some time. They've actually been bringing them supplies that they need on this little island in exchange for other things in return, and then in turn the Sill would then transport that stuff to the mainland body, which is why the body's been able to get the shit that it's been doing. Tasiandale, however, had to go belly up and admit this to the Arcane Congress because they really needed help in kind of like staving off some of the situations going to their southern border with Paradel and whatnot going on. So they really had to go belly up and admit this to try to gain favor of the Arcane Congress. So they're kind of like, so we've been doing a thing. And so this is like, and now as part of that going belly up, they're now aiding them in the destruction of, or at least some sort of insurgents here. And so that's what kind of like how this all came to pass that they're able to do this. So you yourself are aboard one of these two vessels that are quietly sailing across the sea, trying to make it so that you can get to that island without them noticing you. Part of this quiet, silent, blah, blah, blah. So you have your squad with you that's usually with you, right? But your squad isn't the only one that's heading there. As a matter of fact, there's a squad on each ship. Yours is on the ship that you happen to be on, 20 people, right? And there's another squad that happens to be on the other ship that's heading there as well. There are the two savants that generally oversee these, including your savant herself, whose name again was Trilla Loxum, so it's Savant Loxum. And they have their savant that's with them as well. Whatever their specialty is, doesn't matter, you don't care. But what you do know is, even though that they are the tier 3 savants, they also happen to have joining your squadron as a couple of tier 1 savants as well that are literally using some pretty powerful magics to you're familiar with the spell invisibility sphere, right, Josh?
I'm not.
That's fine.
But
so invisibility sphere is a really cool spell. I want to say it's 5th level, maybe it's 4th level, doesn't really matter. Invisibility sphere, the spell, it literally is a 10-foot radius, so 40-foot diameter sphere of invisibility. Everybody who's within that center point, which is usually a caster on themselves, is invisible. There's a few of these spheres thrown across the ship, probably 3 to 4 on each ship, to make sure the ship itself is completely invisible. On top of that, they also have a few kind of like, you imagine how off the side of a ship there's usually like a little like a lantern It kind of like hangs off, right? So on the edge of these things, instead of a lantern hanging off of it, there's like a bit of a stone, like a dark stone that's there. It's a special type of stone that kind of like makes magics elongate their duration. So it's like silent spells kind of thrown there, which stop sounds from penetrating into the ship or from the ship out elsewhere, which kind of keep it so the ship is not giving off any sounds to anywhere around it. So it's literally invisibly and silently sailing through the waters towards this island. You know that's what it's doing for your ship. You're assuming it's what it's doing for the other one as well, because you can't see it, right? Anyways, but what's really cool though is because you're not inside that invisibility sphere. You also, sorry, because you're not inside that sphere of silence, because you're like outside of its diameter, but still like on the ship itself. You still hear the sounds of the ocean splashing against the bottom of the ship. You still the creaking of it, so on and so forth. So you still have all those ship sounds with zero ambient sound of the ocean around you beyond the immediate ship and the people are talking and whispering on it. It's this like very, very, very weird feeling. And even one tier beyond that, because of being super paranoid, is where you generally spend your time kind of preparing yourself, so on and so forth, below deck. They actually have a couple of like little charms or whatever that are able to be used to, it's kind of like a bubble of silence. So these bubbles, the way they work is it makes kind of like a, similar to what I'm describing on a big scale, but a much smaller scale, thin layer of sounds. That if you keep decibels below a certain level, you can actually kind of like have a whispered conversations and they don't penetrate outwards. And other sounds really don't penetrate in. It's kind of something that you would usually use inside of a tavern so people can't really hear conversations with one another if they happen to be at a table nearby. It's a lower tier kind of like bard and illusion spell. Anyways, so even on the ship itself, you and the two people that you happen to be with are within one of these little bubbles. So you guys can kind of confer with one another and plan what your approach is. So it's kind of like setting the tone of your approach to the actual island itself, right? The night is dark. Not only did you guys choose a night with a moon, would be I found a new moon or a sliver, but conveniently there's a very, very, very thick, heavy clouds in the sky overhead. Hardcore overcast that makes it so the night is just naturally very dark. As a gnome, you don't have dark vision, do you?
Gnomes have dark vision. I'm pretty sure they do.
You might. I always forget.
I'll double check.
They're underground creatures, but they're also not, so I always forget, honestly.
They have dark vision.
That's right, halflings don't. Halflings were the ones that had infravision in 2nd edition, but then lost it in 3rd edition on. That's right.
They just dance in the woods.
Yeah. Well, that's a Hufaway in this world, so it's okay. So anyways, they have Twilight Sight. So you, that just means they sparkle like diamonds.
They just see like My Little Ponies all the time. It's just sorry.
Tiny tangent because we're recording, right? Tiny tangent. I've never watched Teen Titans, the old version or the new one, but recently I was like working on my computer with my buddy Henry, and I had my daughter. I needed to distract her, so I put on like a couple clips for like half an hour of the new Teen Titans show she's never seen before. And the way they display Raven as being like, I'm like Eeyore, but like with superpowers, but I love ponies. I was like, I thought it was hilarious. My daughter loved it. She's like, this is the best superhero ever.
Raven's the coolest, so she's the coolest one. So the old one's better. The old one's better.
I won't lie. Watching like a half hour of those clips, I was like, I think I need to go back and watch the show when I have time. And my wife apparently grew up with the older show, so she's like, I'll do that. So that's cool. All right, moving on. That's the approach that you guys have getting there, and it's kind of quiet.
Long did they keep these spells up for? Because the trip is pretty far.
It is pretty far. No, obviously they're not doing this for the entire trip. This is going to be like that 24-hour period leading up to the actual, leading up to the actual island. But how is it they're able to do that? There are certain types of stones, just so you know, that when you cast spells on them, and you might know this from 3rd edition Pathfinder, so on and so forth, there's certain meta magic feats that you can take that either extends the duration, right? Is that, yeah, I want to say extend spells when that extends the duration, doubling the duration. But then there's actually something called persistent spell. If you had never heard of this before, Josh.
I've heard of persistent spell.
So it turns into a 24-hour spell. There's actually certain types of materials that can be found in Aurorum that when processed the correct way and the correct kind of spells are cast into them, it turns them into 24-hour spells. So it's actually a really cool thing that that they're able to use. They're just fucking expensive. But the 24-hour spells that exist, so you don't have to use like these super high tier magics to make it happen. Moving on, you guys make your approach there. You and Halen are sitting in the ship inside your little bubble having the conversation. Halen himself is like chatting and whatnot, but imagine, how is your character kind of reacting to this approach? What are they doing?
Well, he's extremely nervous because he thinks of the importance of this, fixing our mistakes. Yeah, pretty much. Fixing our mistakes, trying to rid the world of these abominations, creatures that are messing up the weave, and they're endangering everybody, not just themselves, not just their area, but everybody. Kind of really has him on edge, and he would actually kind of probably snap at Halen eventually, just be like, shut up, make sure your spells are prepared. Kind of thing. Make sure we need to be fast, we need to be quiet, make sure whatever you have, if you're capable of doing that, make sure you're ready for that.
So Halen himself would kind of like chattering your ear off. You give him that little bit of snap. He goes over his spells, lasts maybe 10 minutes doing that, but eventually just kind of leaves the bubble.
Go back.
And then he leaves the bubble and just talks to other people and whatnot, kind of giving you a bit of silence. The other person that happened to be appointed to you is an observer, as said beforehand, named Josen. Now, Josen is a different type of peacekeeper from you. Josen is actually somebody who's trained not only in the art of utilizing magic, but also the art of utilizing an actual sword and shield. Somebody that's literally trains to use their abjuration magics to defend themselves and those that are immediately around them. Now, let's not confuse this with the Gish that are known to be used over in Malta. I mean, those morons are kind of people that like use magic to like enhance their weapons and their attacks and so on and so forth. That's all good and well because but it requires you to actually hit your opponent with a sword and be skilled. The cool thing about Josen's type of training is you don't actually have to be necessarily particularly skilled with one or the other. A shield is intrinsically, even with very little training with a shield, is something that intrinsically is going to be able to block some degree of attacks. But the magic's literally able to do things like expands the amount that the shield is able to cover, to lend certain protections to those that are immediately around you. Are you familiar with the paladin spell like Shield Other, stuff like that?
Yeah.
There's a slightly arcane version of that the Arcane Congress came up with called Blood for Blood that allows them to do that as an immediate action or a what do they call it in Pathfinder?
Reaction.
Yeah, reaction or immediate action. There you go, those are the words. That allows you to do that for one round as opposed to a duration, stuff like that. These are kind of like the trainings that they get to, and they tend to be a bit more stout, a bit more tough of gnomes compared to like the typical member of the Arcane Congress, right? Moving on. So Josen's with you. One of the things to know about Josen is that they clearly have a couple of scars. They've been through a few situations themselves, and by admittance, because you've made a little bit of conversation with them, this is not their first insurgence into Silencio, which is nice because it means that they've actually kind of seen what you're going up against. It's good to have that experience with you. But another thing about Josen, they're not really talkative. They almost have that kind of, Rambo-esque 1,000-yard stare going there, where as they're getting ready, they do things like they take their sword out and they use a little bit of magic to kind of like hone the blade and getting it ready and whatnot and shielding it, getting their shield out, using a little bit of magic to kind of like get it prepared to properly defend them when the time comes, so on and so forth, that kind of stuff. Either way, when your ship finally approaches, is getting close to where it is you're going, the approach to the beach itself, you are told by your savant who comes down to speak with you. She actually comes down and it's kind of like that weird little thing where you don't hear anything, and all of a sudden she pierces through the bubble and you hear the click-clack of her heeled boots, that thick heel, not stiletto, of her heeled boots kind of like coming into the bubble, stepping into over, and it's kind of like a jarring, all of a sudden you hear it right next to you, like you said, and you look over and you see her standing there. She looks to you and says, "It's your time. We're going to need you on deck."
Oh, yes, Servant. On deck. Oh, okay. I grab my book, and I grab my wand, and I follow her immediately. Or I head up to deck. I won't follow her because she probably has other things she needs to do.
Sure. You'll make your way to the deck. As you're doing that, actually, could you do me a favor and go ahead and describe your wand for me? And also describe the significance of wands in the character concept, please.
His wand is actually it has the markings of Lady Orenda. Is that how you say it?
Winifred Orenda, so Lady Orenda.
Yeah, Lady Orenda. It has the markings of Lady Orenda on it, and it's kind of shaped more like a writing utensil, but at the end, it's obviously blunt at the end, and it's smaller and a little twiggy like, but it's more like a pencil, more like a writing utensil than it is like a traditional like wizard's wand.
Yeah.
So and it kind of matches his book.
Like 12 inches long. You're talking about something that's closer to say like a 6 inches long.
Yeah. It's very short. I have very short wand.
So short and narrow. So anyways, keep going.
So yeah, and it matches his book rather well. You could tell the two follow set, and if anyone noticed on his book, he actually would have a Lady Orenda marking on that as well. And he's a clear follower of her faith.
Cool. And can you actually do me a favor as well, as you're kind of like stepping out onto the deck, stepping up the thing, and I imagine your character does not really have sea legs by any stretch of the imagination, so the ship's kind of like knocking back and forth, and you're feeling a little bit queasy, finally standing up and walking for the first time in a few hours. Feeling a bit queasy, coming up to the deck itself with Halen several steps behind and Jocelyn immediately behind Halen, hoping that they'll walk faster. Describe actually your character.
Okay, so he is actually a tan skin. He has like braided hair down. Yeah, his hair is kind of braided. He keeps it rather short though, so it's a tight fit to his head. And anytime he goes on types of missions like this, he keeps it braided so that it doesn't become a nuisance. He wears rather plain robes. He doesn't put a lot of money into the superficial kind of stuff. He only does what he needs, like wears what he needs to do. He's rather short for a gnome. He's actually on the very short side. And he's a little bit lankier, but with his position and where he was, he has a little bit of the gut going on because he doesn't really go out in the field all that much.
Yep, makes sense. And when you say plain robes, obviously you're still sporting the appropriate colors of your
yeah.
But otherwise, yeah. So relatively, they're not like super dolled up or whatever.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah.
Quick question, actually, with your description, because I think it's the first time I've actually heard that description about your hair. When you say braided, I understand short braided, but is this braided like Celtic braids, or is this braided like cornrow braid?
Cornrow.
Oh, okay, cool. Now, is it usually Celtic, but you go cornrow for operation, or just the different?
Normally he just lets it free.
Oh, okay.
So it's but when he goes on missions and stuff, he keeps it tight so that he doesn't have to worry about it.
Gotcha. And do you actually like use magic to kind of throw that up there for you, or do you actually like style it yourself, or do you actually like, go to a person to have it done for you?
He would go to a person before he leaves,
Gotcha.
kind of thing,
so
and get it
like
done.
That pre prepping. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's like a ritual he does. He probably goes to a shrine and all that stuff and does a ritual before he leaves for a trip.
I'm genuinely curious what it was that caused him to get into that habit. What went wrong to make him want to do it? But we don't have time for that now. So
just gonna say he uses a lot of fire. So
are you saying you have drawn on eyebrows? You know what? Let's just leave that subject alone because drawn on eyebrows are funny. So you are going up to the top deck, like I said. So when you actually get out there, the captain of the ship themselves is going to be Tasian military. So this actually happens to be Tasian is predominantly human, but there's a lot of mole and whatnot that are involved. So the captain of the ship actually happens to, of course, be a mole that walks up to you, and when she comes up to you, she's like, because you've met each other before, so on and so forth. She says, I was looking for your name, Laszlo. You and you two are prepared, correct? We're going to need you up in the Eagle's Nest. Up there, you'll have your savants will meet you, so you are ready for your departure.
Thank you for informing us.
So you kind of like make your way over to the Eagle's Nest. Again, you're not really sea legs. There's netting and whatnot going up there. You just kind of like grit and bear and immediately climb up. And you kind of like take one of those moments and look up at the daunting, swaying thing.
He's an inquisitive sort. He would look, even though he knows better. He'd still be like, oh, I gotta know.
Don't look up. So you do that, and Jocelyn just kind of like, the two of you move too slowly for him. He literally moves like me on an escalator. Like, why are you standing there? Like, I'll push your child off the escalator. Move. So you, yeah. I'm like a person. If there's nobody in front of you and you're standing on the escalator, I stand too close behind you because you're in my way. So, yeah, like I'm gonna make you uncomfortable as you start walking. So if there's somebody in front of you and it's not your fault, I'm not rude. So anyways, if you are so if you you kind of like as you're standing there kind of like looking up and Halen's doing kind of like a similar thing but he's a bit more vocal about it, you literally see Jocelyn just kind of like does one of those side steps around you, like intentional side steps around you. It's just immediately climbing up there deftly up to the top. And so when you kind of like see that happening, I imagine it's like, yeah, and you start like immediately climbing up too. Halen takes a couple extra moments and then finally does as well. You get up there, you don't need to make any checks or anything. I mean, it's not sloppy, it's not great.
Thank goodness.
You get up there. Halen, there's a moment where Halen literally is have you ever gone to a fair where you're on those like rope things that kind of like swing over and now you're upside down? Yeah. Halen was almost treating it like one of those. It's kind of embarrassing, but eventually gets up to the top.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wraps his leg around the pole and just like pulls.
The first time you helped your 2-year-old up a rope ladder, like one of those scenarios. So anyways, eventually gets to the top and it's almost kind of an embarrassing. So you, when you're finally up there, like within a minute or so of kind of like being up there, once you get used to the sway, it's actually kind of beautiful to silently stare out. The only sound you have around you is coming directly from beneath you. There is no sound above you or around you.
Oh, we're still in the bubble at this height?
At this height. Everything is in the bubble. So you can't hear anything. About a minute or so later of kind of taking this like awkward kind of perception, she eventually comes up to you. But her getting up there, let's be serious, she's not going to waste her time with climbing up a rope ladder. It's one of those kind of like snap jumps, almost like a many dimension door to kind of get up there, like a misty step to stand there next to you. And when she stands there adjacent to you, she starts pulling out a scroll and says, as we've discussed beforehand, you're going to have a different approach from the rest. They're going to be a bit of a distraction for you on the beaches as we storm them. Your responsibility is to get to a particular town that exists nearby. We believe that within this town there is going to be as we discussed before, an artifact that you need to get your hands on, that you need to investigate. I will tell you this. The location of this artifact is not going to be where you immediately believe it to be. Be keen, be watchful, be vigilant. I don't know where it's going to hide, but these abominations do the best they can to try to throw off our scent. Luckily, they are twisted alterations of reality and not actual sapient beings. We can easily outsmart them, similar to how you can outsmart even the most keen of dog or squirrel. Now, that being said, I'm going to use here a spell that is going to make you a bit insubstantial. Overland Flight, if you're not familiar. Overland Flight will bring you overhead, watch down, and hopefully they will not notice you because they're going to be distracted. As soon as you choose to descend, as soon as you choose to touch the ground, if you do not lift off the ground within a minute's time, you will completely recorporate to exactly your state that you are in now, and the spell will end. That means that your departure is going to have to be either rejoining with us back on the ships or a different method. Roll a perception check. You actually see as she says a different method, she kind of like looks over for half a moment at Jocelyn. So you kind of get the impression that maybe there's another idea in mind for how it is you guys going to release, which kind of makes sense. Obviously, rejoining back on the ship, who knows how things are going to go, right? You've never actually done an insurgence beforehand. So she's kind of says that and kind of tosses a glance over to Jocelyn, and she finishes pulling the scroll out, kind of like unfurling it and whatnot. She says, do you have any last second questions or any other concerns that you may have before you departs, or anything that you're going to be doing?
Is our job to eliminate any sill that we come across, or just the artifact?
Obviously, if you have any hindrance between yourself and your task, we will eliminate all of those hindrances. Do not go on a hunt. That is not your job. But if you do make any impacts along the way, make the impacts that you can.
Understood.
She nods and says that I need all of you to please touch hands or shoulders. Make sure that you do not break connection with one another. If you do so, the spell is put on the focal point of this endeavor. It's put on you, Laszlo. Should either of them break connection with you, they will fall, they will drown, or they will die. She then starts, as they kind of like, and one to either side of you, placing like a hand on your shoulder. She starts saying the incantation. This is kind of an interesting spell that she's kind of go through. Again, this is not a low tier spell that she's doing. And she starts casting it, so on and so forth. You can literally see there's like a strange kind of like cloud or mist that's coming off the scroll as she does it. And then as she's making this cloud, kind of this thick not pungent, but this thick like kind of like plume come up, she looks at you. She takes a deep breath and then blows the cloud in your direction, and you kind of like inhale it. And as you're like inhaling this cloud, you can literally feel all of your bodies kind of being like disproportionately like ripped apart, not in a painful way, but in a weird kind of like tingly sensation sort of way. And as you look down at yourself, you can almost see like yourself expanding and getting a bit more large and sparse and whatnot, as you're becoming almost like a cloudish version of yourself with this overland flight spell. And the same is happening to those on either side of you. Their clouds are kind of like intermingled with yours, as their bodies are somewhat in yours and yours somewhat in theirs, in this kind of like strange vaporish kind of way. And the three of you, my apologies, start to get weightless and lift up higher and higher. And then you realize that you can actually choose exactly how dense you want yourself to be. The less dense you choose yourself to be, the quicker you rise. The more dense you choose yourself to be, the lower you fall. But remember, you touch the ground, it triggers the ending of the spell. So clearly you choose to be less dense and go up. She says to you, and it almost comes off as strange and dense to you. It almost comes off as like coming through lead, because of how hard she is compared to your ethereal state, vaporish state. She says to you, good luck, as you're kind of like rising up. So as you're rising up, you're starting to like see exactly how, now in overland flight, you actually do travel faster than say a typical foot would allow you to travel, right? And certainly you're not hindered by things like trees or hills or whatever it might be. But you can see exactly how close you were. I didn't describe this beforehand, sorry, when you're on the crow's nest. Exactly how close you were to the docks below. We're talking as you're rising up and she turns to look towards the shore. Within a minute's time, they smash into the shore itself. Now, as for the smashing into the shore, it actually happens a little bit different than you might expect. Literally, a couple of mages come rushing forward to the front of it, whether they pulling out scrolls or holding open their tomes or pulling out a wand or holding a staff over their head or whatever it might be. Each of them are incanting to the best that they can. And you can actually see it. What they're doing is they're literally rippling and moving the earth out of the way before the ship, almost making kind of like a pivot or whatnot, perfectly in front of the ship. So as the ship finally docks itself by landing into the actual dirt itself, the sand that's there, it's like it kind of like rides up the way you imagine you've seen in a million movies before on a beach. Literally the ground moves so it docks smoothly, like half the ship is already like launched into the beach itself right next to it. And it's a crazy scenario where literally as they do that, you can start to see a few of the a few of the members of the Arcane Congress down below jumping off the ship and starting their assault that they're doing. As they are starting to do that, things almost immediately go sideways. What you see is insanity. First of all, you don't see a single sill. Instead, what you see is the sand itself starts to rise up. Now, could you do me a favor and roll me a Arcana check?
22.
You know perfectly what an elemental is. You've heard of these things. They're creatures that come from the inner planes. They're creatures that, are literally comprised of whatever material they are. Whether or not they have a soul or anything like that, you don't know this kind of like esoteric kind of information. But you know that these are very, very tough creatures, literally made out of just the material that they look like they're made out of. And they're usually pretty amorphous and whatnot, depending on what the material is. Excuse me. They don't breathe, they don't eat, they don't any of that crap like that. They're just like big and tough. So you literally see this sand creature appear before you. However, any creature that you've ever encountered that was an elemental in the past, summoned, whatever, was always, so sorry, I have like hiccupy things going on, I feel like Mathis, was always the size of, say, like a human or an orc or whatever in the past, or smaller. You're seeing a creature the size of a building. These creatures are, to put it in metagame terms, huge-sized, that are before you. This is a huge-sized sand elemental that immediately appears and starts coming towards and attacking at the gnomes that are jumping off the boat and starting to fight. You can see that literally as that's happening, the gnomes that are jumping off of the ship, not your ship, but the other one, are trying to engage with them. The spells that they're throwing at this thing, hurling lightning at it, hurling balls of fire at it, using incantations to try to make the creature move a bit slower. All these different things they're trying to do to impact it, all these spells that you're familiar with from all of your years of study, they're throwing all of these spells at it, etc., etc., etc. You can literally see that your, as that one elemental is there kind of distracting them, you can see that others are popping up as well. You can see literally rocks are starting to roll into the field of battle as well. The rocks themselves kind of like popping up as these like medium or small sized elementals running into the battlefield and clashing with the other gnomes that happen to be there. You can see that at one point in time, you literally feel the air around you is rippling and gusting massively. You actually thought it was going to throw you off course for a minute, but luckily you're kind of able to stay a bit above where these gusts are happening, and you can see the wind itself is kind of dropping down to the field, almost making like for a moment it looked like it could have been another sand elemental, but it isn't. It's literally a wind elemental that has just sand whipping around it pretty rapidly because of its own internal gust or whirlwind ability, as it also joins the battle. All this is happening. You can literally see your savant herself stepping to the edge of the ship. As she's stepping to the edge of the ship, she's reaching out, saying an incantation that, honestly, is one that kind of you find to be very impressive. Are you familiar with the spell Chain Lightning?
Yes.
This is an alteration to that one. This is Chain Lightning, but instead of being lightning, it's some sort of like dark purplish energy that's giving off that you can literally see is causing literally the sand itself to turn black and decay. You can literally see the wind is just dying down around it as it's jumping from creature to creature, so on and so forth, as literally it's just like a bunch of the rocks literally crumble to nothingness as like bits of this chain is hitting those creatures about. She's literally using these huge spells and whatnot. But as she's doing that, her focus is so there, she doesn't realize what's going on behind her. You almost want to call out a warning, but you can't because you're nothing but a cloud. You're nothing but this vapor. You literally see behind her the most massive, like, of course there's storm water, whatever, right? As you can imagine, because the winds and everything happening. But literally, you can see the water itself recedes for a second, building up a large and larger and larger wave behind it, as all of a sudden you see a massive water elemental. You don't even know what size it is. Is it huge size? Is it bigger? You honestly can't tell. But you've never seen a wave that large before. It literally is building up, building up, building up, and it starts to reach out and grabs literally at the ship that your savant happens to be on, and literally grabs the ship, collapsing on it and ripping it back. You'd almost see, like, it almost looks like hands grabbing at it and ripping it back into the sea. You can see that the way that it just kind of collapses onto it. The ship, you can hear the creaking even as far away as you are, splintering and cracking the ship into half. You can see other gnomes trying to dive off of it. What happens to your savant, you can't see. But you can see other gnomes literally trying to dive off of it, just into the waves itself. You can imagine that it's just crushed underneath the weight of the water. The ship itself is almost immediately, within 2-3 seconds, is splintered off into tons of different planks of wood all over the place. It is just a devastating sight to see happen as the battle beneath you continues to rage on. Despite that, that's not your concern.
No,
concern is to get
she can take care of herself.
Of course, as can they. Your concern is to get to this town that they're talking about. And so you do. You're making your way over there with this overhead flight. You see cracks of lightning. You see flashes of light or whatever happening in the past behind you. You hear loud booms happening behind you that's kind of lighting up the sky. But you move forward to where it's quieter, where it's more serene. And then you see it down below. There's a little bit of lights, a little bit of flecks of light. They're fools. They're morons, of course. These are animalistic creatures. Why would they leave something so easily discoverable? But there you are, flecks of light up ahead. You finally go down, and you see there is a town. A town that honestly, it's no surprise, because again, these are twisted creatures, abominations of what you are. It makes sense that it's almost like, almost kind of like looks like what a gnomish town would look like. Slight alterations to it, as you can imagine, but the architecture, very, very similar. The design, very, very similar. The others that you've seen before. So it's pretty easy for you to discover, yeah, this is clearly the town that we're talking about. So I imagine you lower yourself to the town?
Yeah, I would definitely, and I would try to look out for any building that looks to be it's more fortified than any of the others.
Okay. So one of the things to note is, so you want, my apologies with this perception check that you're going to make, you're specifically looking for, you're going to try to land on whatever building that might be, as opposed to maybe an outskirt or...
Yeah, if I would check the building to see if they're fools and they would have a chimney.
Okay.
Yeah, and then use this to our advantage.
Okay, so roll me that perception check, sir, but because you aren't limited for time, I'll actually allow you to spend a considerable amount of time doing this. And you can actually get with advantage, or if you want to feel pressed for time, you can roll normal. It's up to you.
I'm gonna roll normal because I think we're pressed for time. I think he wants to complete the mission. 11. She took advantage. I should have just been 1. Be like, I take 5. Whatever it is.
I take 500, right? So anyways, so yeah, so you are looking around, and unfortunately, the closest thing to a fortified location that you can find is what looks to be what, in a gnomish town, would be like a town hall. A place where you imagine that important things that need to be said or shared or whatever from whoever the local government in Eustace would be, or if the Arcane Congress needs to call for some sort of meeting because of concerns, they would be a bit of a town hall, and certainly where the governmental officials would kind of gather to have their meetings and blah, blah, blah. So you can see a kind of building like that, but nothing that seems more fortified than the others.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm going to go to that because if I don't see anything that isn't more fortified, we're going to need to question somebody. We're going to need to find out information. That's probably where people would be.
Sure.
So if we could gain the element of surprise, like by just showing up and then taking out as many as we can and keeping someone as a hostage, that would be my next alternative to get more information.
So this town hall, as you can imagine, does in fact have a fire, a chimney, of course, because you have to have fires to stay warm, right? So you would easily be able to drop yourselves down the chimney. You come down Santa Claus style. And so you did say you're portly, right? So you do come down Santa Claus style down the chimney and are going to be able to appear down beneath it. Now, you do have dark vision, but as soon as you kind of come out into the town hall area, my apologies. Technically, there's going to be more than one chimney here. In a building of the size, you're actually going to have 3 different chimneys. I'm actually going to need, because architectural engineering doesn't exist on this version of the game, and could you actually roll for me an intelligence check?
9.
So you know that there's probably a chimney for where there might be a kitchen for like kind of cooking whatever food or whatever it might be for events that are there. You know, there's going to be a chimney for the main hall, so on and so forth. You know, there's going to be another chimney for like the offices or whatever that are going to exist here, because sometimes you don't necessarily need to heat everything at once in the winter, right? You just need to heat the area that's most important. That being said, you don't know which is which.
Yeah.
I mean, there is one that's larger than the other, so potentially that's the main hall, but you don't necessarily know that. Which one would you kind of go for? Go for the larger or one of the smaller?
If I can't tell, then I'll go to the end and we can work our way through the building instead of starting in the middle and then having a potential issue of being ambushed from both sides.
Cool. And by the end, you mean, of course, like the back end, not the front end. Cool.
Yeah, the back end, whatever, just one end of the building so we can work our way through without having to worry about check our backs.
From what Tiv told me, you always come through the back door. So you go to the last chimney and you start dropping down Santa Claus style. And funny enough, actually, the one that you're going to be coming through is specifically the kitchens. I need you to roll 2 checks for me. One of them is actually going to be stealth with advantage, because even though you're missed, you still do brushed past things because you are somewhat substantial. So stealth with advantage, followed by a perception check as you finally enter into the area.
Okay.
Cool. You're making.
God, my stealth is bad.
So it's fine. We're gonna call you Tesh. So you as you're kind of like making your way down there, honestly, nobody's really expecting something to come through there. And again, the amount of noise that a cloud can have coming through a chimney.
I mean, I imagine it sounds like a fart. It's just like as it comes through the.
No, it's actually less about noise and more about because as there probably is a little bit of a noise if somebody happens to be in the room, but it's more about that's actually kicking out a bit of dust. If you've ever been near a chimney or ash before, literally just a little sends up enough dust that's going to take what?
I live in Florida.
I have a pellet stove I have to clean out all the time. So anyways, it literally just like a little sends up a plume of dust that takes several minutes to, so you can imagine what that's like, right? So you're literally kicking out dust as you're doing this, like ash or soot, right? So as you're coming out. So You guys do come out there, and so as you're doing that, it seems like nobody's in the room. You actually get that impression very quickly as you're hitting the ground, starting to corporeate yourself here inside the inside the place. There's nobody here inside the kitchen. Nobody that immediately jumps out at you. But
Okay.
you do hear a noise outside of the kitchen. The kitchen itself doesn't have a big door that's like a shut door. It's like a swinging door, as you can imagine. So the swinging door to the kitchen, you can actually hear noises coming from the outside of it. You think it's voices. You can't make out what they're saying.
Okay. So as soon as we can become physical again, I'll look to Josen and I'll say, Josen, we're gonna need to ask somebody where the items are. I say we go in there. We take out everybody, but we leave one alive and we question them.
Josen nods and says, Josen will nod and look to you and say, what's the biggest boom you've got?
I laugh. I go, I can make a pretty big fire.
He nods and says, as long as we can find out where it is that we need to go, we don't really care about how big, as long as we can find out where it is that we need to go, we do not really care whether or not people know our location. I will keep you safe enough. Let's just be quick. I say, drop the bomb and see what survives.
Okay. So I will head over to the door and I'll look to how is Halen taking this?
So funny enough, as you're saying that, Halen's kind of like watching back and forth, and you start heading over towards the door, and so you look back at Halen to kind of like check on him, as you were just saying, and he actually reaches out to stop for a second, and when he does that, he actually is going to whip open his book, and he's going to flip through it really quickly and points down his book, and he's like. And so you can actually, I don't know if you come across, see what it is that he's doing, or if you just let him cast a spell.
No, I let him. I try to get close to the door and stay there, so in case anything happens, I'm ready. But I'll just keep an eye and wait for him to say something.
He very quickly casts the spell Clairvoyance. It's like a second level spell that allows him to literally look into the other room. And when he does so, when he looks into the other room, he's kind of you can see his eyes kind of roll to the back of his head, and he's kind of looking through it and whatnot. He does that for a few moments, and then kind of when he blinks again, he says, he looks over and he's like, "They're disgusting. You should see these creatures. There's 17 of them in there. They're all kind of huddled together. I think they're planning some sort of, I don't know, but they're across the room from where it is that you'd be coming from. Prepare your spell before you open the door."
All right, so I will prepare fireball.
Okay. So it's one of those things where I imagine your character literally just starts going into the motions of casting the spell, however as you do with your wand.
He opens the book. He opens the book and he's writing on the paper. He's just going like this, and as he's writing, you can see a spark and a flame just start growing on the tip. And then he, when he's ready to cast it, he just holds it out, closes the book, and you can see the fire is just barely holding on at the tip, like he's just ready to launch it.
Imagine with that, you actually do that with the step through the door.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, as soon as everyone looks like they're ready, I'll look around, and then holding concentration, I'll just step in and try to find the center of the crowd and launch it right at them.
Beautiful. And so you're going to do that literally as you step through the door. You just hurl the fireball, and you're actually welcome to just kind of drop that into. Everybody likes Oh, look at all those beautiful dice.
There's so many. There's only one. Okay.
Do you have the ability to recast that because of your archetype?
I have something called Power Surge. No. When I get Power Surges, when I it says energy equal to whenever you finish a long rest, your number of Power Surges resets to 1. Oh, I can.
Yeah, you can Power Surges. Yeah. Once per turn, when you deal damage to a creature or object with a wizard spell, you can expend 1 Power Surge to deal extra force damage to the target. The extra damage equals half your wizard level, and you're a level what? What wizard?
8.
It's 4 extra damage, so that's 28 points of damage. So 28 points of damage is rather considerable. I'm just going to quickly do a saving throw thingy.
Fail. These beasts.
So most of them fail. And even the ones that succeed, half of that is 14 points of damage. which is
Well.
enough to kill what?
Oh, 14. You're right with the +4.
Which is enough to kill many of them. So literally, you hurl this ball of fire in there, and you can just see the ball as it goes out, and just right as it hits the center area, and it just explodes outwards. It's one of those because you did specifically your ability is called power surge. So funny, the fire spell is actually just fire magic, so it actually doesn't have much force to it. It literally is just like a burning, like an eruption after a fire outwards. It just burns things down, kind of like napalm. Napalm doesn't have force to it; it just burns everything, right? Except when you use power surge, you actually add a bit of like to it. So you can literally see right where you drop it, literally you blow everybody backwards from one another. Like kind of throwing them back a little bit, also dropping that like napalm on them. It's like sticking to them and burning them. There's like, honestly, you kill so many of them so quickly, only half of them even give out a shout or a scream. And the other half only let out screams for like a few seconds before they are just completely snuffed out. Kind of like destroying the abomination before you. Fortunately, some of them do survive long enough for you to actually get some answers out of. 2 of them do. But before you can even kind of like really perceive this very much, literally as you were throwing that ball of fire, before you can even really spend too much time, literally kind of like pushing past you, throwing up an incantation in front of them as they go, you can literally see, and again, you're so familiar with magic, you can literally see absorb elements as a spell being thrown up by Jocelyn as he dashes into your fire. But it's one of those fun things where even if he throws into the fire, he throws up a shield in front of him, he throws up the spell in front of that, and doesn't even care that there's licking flames around him as he rushes up. So even though there's like they said, they all die pretty quickly, there's 2 of them surviving. He quickly pulls out his sword and just ends the life of one of them as he approaches them and quickly kind of steps over to the other one that's there. You don't know, but he moves so quickly, it is possible that he put like an expeditious retreat or like a haste on himself to allow him to get this kind of extra little boost, right? So he kind of got in there, and now he's standing there with a sword to the last one surviving. And so you're kind of taking point on this one, so it's up to you to kind of approach.
Yeah, I'll walk over to the beast and I'll say,
describe these beasts. Interrupt what you're going to say. They are a twisted version of gnomes, as we said beforehand. So whereas gnomes can have many different colors to their skin, lots of like rosiness to their cheeks, paler skin, very dark skinned, whatever it might be. Sometimes as dark as midnight itself. You know what I mean? There are many different tones or whatever to gnomes that you've seen beforehand, and the hair color can come in many different shades of like almost like a platinum color blonde, all the way down to like a deep dark black. Their eyes can come in things like purples and greens, blues, etc., etc. Gnomes also have these large and expressive smiles. They actually are large and expressive mouths. They have very expressive faces. They can be when a gnome laughs, it's honestly so big and boisterous of a laugh. For non-gnomes, it's kind of like awkward to them, and it almost like entices them to laugh as well, because it's like so almost comical to see it happen. When a gnome is sad and cries, it almost like makes other people more sad because of how additionally expressive their faces are. It's not true for the Sill. As a matter of fact, the only way to describe what I'm saying about the Sill is almost if you took what I described of these masters of necromancy before and said that was a diet, like a 1% version of what these Sill are. Their faces are grayed out. Whatever skin tone they possibly would have had if they were actually a gnome is almost in grayscale. A lighter color or a darker color gray. The hair itself is again almost like a switched halfway into grayscale from whatever color it would have been. If it was a blonde, it's like a kind of a grayed out blonde or a grayed out black. You know what I mean? Be halfway to the grayscale format. Their eyes have almost a whisper, almost like a quarter way to grayscale, like a whisper of the color that they were beforehand, kind of giving a little bit of not true, sorry. Their eyes are all black. Haha, sorry, their eyes are all black. There's no pupil, there's no iris, there's no whites to it. Their eyes are completely all black, right? Almost like if you were looking at a deer, assuming they weren't like looking at a deer standing there, all black. The expression on the creature's face, there's no expression at all. It's clearly in pain. It just got blasted with a fucking fireball. There's a sword pointed at it. It's on the ground. Clearly is in pain, and it can see the scenario it's in. But you don't see a single expression on his face.
Why would I? They don't have one.
Exactly, because they don't feel
emotions.
They move a bit stranger than you do. Whereas like you have a bit of a fluidity to the way that you move. They don't. So the way that they move, when they want to go to reaching down, if I want to pick up like this D20 that's on my table, you would just be like, oh, I want the D20, you'd go and you grab it and you pick it up and bring it back. They don't do that. It's like they notice the D20, they turn and look at it. They want to grab it, they reach out, grab it, pull it back. It's like these like shorter burst movements as opposed to this like fluid way that a typical living creature would. And these are abominations. These aren't regular creatures. So that's what you're seeing on the grounds before you. Anyways, the sword is at it. You walk up, you approach, and you say, and it turns its attention towards you as you start to speak.
In Gnomish, I'll grab my wand and I'll start like I'm writing in the book again. And when I pull it out, I just have a firebolt bolt ready on the tip, and I'll hold it out to him. I'll say in Gnomish, can you understand me?
It doesn't really have a tone to it. It just says, of course.
Where do you keep your items, your magical items?
Why should I tell you?
Because the more you tell me, the least amount of time will be here.
If I tell you, we'll less die.
That's not my choice to make.
Roll a persuasion. Sorry.
Intimidation. Yeah. 19.
It just looks at you and says, then the information is not mine to give.
Fine. And I let go. I let loose with the fireball.
Do me a favor, roll me an insight check.
14.
As you let go of that thing, there's like a moment where as you blast this creature, this abomination, you can see, even though its face is expressionless, there's nothing in its face whatsoever that shows that it's afraid or anything like that, that it's going to die or anything like that, that its mortality of those around that died. It doesn't have any face or anything whatsoever. Its eyes, those dead black eyes that it has, for a moment, you thought you saw fear? No. Pride. Maybe both. For a moment you thought you saw that. Either way, honestly, probably a trick of light, doesn't really matter what it is. So anyways, it dies there on the ground before you. And Halen looks down at the thing and says, ugh, they're disgusting, aren't they? I'm glad you killed it. It was giving me the
Halen, it's time for us to do our job. We need to search for these items. And I'll start casting detect magic on myself.
Jocelyn's going to do Halen's going to do the same thing as well. Going to cast detect magic as well. Jocelyn, however, is actually going to be reaching throughout the corpses, kind of like flipping them over, kicking them over, and looking for things that might be on them, things that might be of value or use. Mm-hmm. As you're casting detect magic, Halen, like I said, is doing the same thing as well. His way of casting detect magic is a little bit different than yours. You, of course, pull out your book, you say your incantation, you take magic, all of a sudden you start to see hues and whatnot around you. Change is literally able to see the kind of the natural magic of the landscape and everything. Exists as well as the lingering effect of the fireball that you threw and all that other fun stuff, right? So that happens as normal. But when Halen does, he actually does it slightly differently. He casts detect magic, but he actually pulls out, when he opens up his book, literally to the page where that is, similar as you do, almost like you imagine like one of those like stowaway, like I hide my drugs in my Bible kind of book things. Like almost like a little cutout area where that is. But you can imagine almost like extra dimensional, because like he pulls a crystal out from inside that page that otherwise wouldn't have fit, because there's no cutout and pages behind it. Pulls out a little crystal and uses like almost like a tuning to it as he casts the spell. And you can see that he casts the spell and does so. And as he kind of like looks around, you can see his facial expression. It's kind of like he's kind of like taken aback as he's like blinking and looking around, and he almost looks like a little nauseous.
What's wrong?
It's magic here is, oh god, it's shifting and weird. I just don't know how to read it. Things are distorting and funny. Can you see it?
I don't see it like that, do I?
You don't, actually. It looks just as you would expect it to.
Yeah. And it's like, no, I do not. I see the auras like normal. Can you pinpoint the awkwardness? Can you pinpoint where these waves, this is them tampering with the fabric. We have to fix that.
You know, it's like, I think I need air. And starts trying to like stumble his way over towards you. You can tell he's trying to walk towards the door, but much like if somebody was drunk and they're like off by a couple degrees, he's like stumbling slightly wrong way towards the door.
Yeah.
Do you kind of like guide him the correct way to the door?
Yeah, I would help him, and I'll say, Juicing, can you watch your backs?
Joseph actually immediately kind of gets in front of you, shield out. As he gets his shield out, once again, kind of like you can see like the way he's mumbling under his breath and whatnot. He's almost like preparing spells in advance, so he can quick fire a spell if he needs to. Kind of like complete the incantation to let loose the magics. As he goes over, and then when it's ready for you guys to kind of go to the door, you guiding him towards it. Jocelyn actually opens the door and like takes the quick step out. And when he's stands outside the door with the shield at the ready, sword at the ready, and whatnot, looking around, he actually was like clear and like steps to the side for you guys to come out as well. As he goes out there, and you guys get once again greeted by that crisp air that's outside, you can see he's kind of like swooned once again as he like is taken aback, and he's like, oh, it's dizzying, but beautiful. Hold on, I need to sit down. I need to attune. And he literally just sits down on the ground right in front of this building, out in the middle of the open, in this place. Yeah. And he does that not for a short period of time. He does it for like a solid 2 minutes. But the whole time he's doing that, what do you do? Like, what's your character up to?
I'm looking around, trying to see if any of the other houses give off any type of hue. I'm also trying to look for, like, if I see any lights or anything that we might have to worry about being ambushed while we're there, because we're just 3 people. In a hornet's nest. So I'm looking around to make sure there's no lights on any of the windows, and then if any of the hues, the auras stand out, like if there's anything in the house is leaking aura or something like that.
Do me a favor, roll me a perception check, and a perception check followed by an arcana check. Sorry.
8. This is what I'm good at, supposedly. All right, 21.
2 things happen. 1, your perception check tells you nothing. You're not able to see anything. Luckily, Jocelyn is actually on guard as well, and so Jocelyn's actually able to do things like protect you guys. Another stray person does come by, but Jocelyn doesn't just have a sword with them. They also, of course, have a wand as well with some lower tier combat magics as well. He's able to hurl magics over to handle the one person that happens to come by and notice the 3 of you that are there. With your Arcana check, however, watching, what's his name there? Hale on the ground holding the stone and kind of like attuning their own magics, you start to get the impression that you should do the same thing as well. You start trying to like, almost like looking out of focus, almost like trying to focus incorrectly on the magics around you. You have to kind of take a step back. What?
Because it's wrong. The way they do it's wrong.
Exactly. You can almost like start to see wrong. You can almost start to see magics that are there but aren't there but are there, and it's kind of like throwing you off. Only little whispers of it, kind of hinting in, kind of like floaters in your vision or flashes in your vision, right? That are there for just like a moment or two and then gone. They're kind of like waving in and wave out at the same time. You can't quite attune to it, but you're starting to get the impression that there is something here. However, even though you're starting to kind of like do that yourself, you're not trained in doing this sort of thing. You certainly don't have a focal crystal. Phelan, however, is and does. And so finally he just kind of like blinks a few times, leans forward and vomits. But then sits up, and as he's like wiping away the vomit onto the sleeve of his robes that's there, leaving behind a little bit of like a wet trail that's there, he looks up and says, I did it. And he stands up and he's holding the crystal in his hands, nothing in his other hands, just a wet sleeve. And he says, you should see it. This is beautiful. Have you ever seen the Borealis? Have you ever seen the lights? It looks like that, but everywhere around this town. It's strange, but there's a focal point. It kind of steps out and around and kind of like starts walking almost zombie-esque away from where you are. Clearly not being safe, but that's okay. This is literally what Jocelyn's here for. Jocelyn immediately like rolls his eyes and takes a quick couple steps forward and immediately like walks shield forward, sword out in front of him, making sure that things are protected. How do you follow behind, next to, in front of? How do you follow with them?
I'm very confused by his words. It doesn't make sense to me. This strangeness doesn't look beautiful to me. It's wrong. It looks odd. So I'm kind of weary about maybe this town's having an effect on him. So I'm keeping a close eye on him. I'm staying close. I'll follow him, but I'm keeping a close eye on him, making sure he's not being influenced by this twisting of magic.
So when you kind of like follow him around the corner, literally as he steps around the corner, he stops short and his mouth drops, and he just like stands there like.
What is it? I can't see the things you see.
It's different. It's like a vortex. It's all there. And he points down the way from where you are to, it's a good distance from where you are, maybe like, I don't know, 200 feet or so. But a nondescript house, not too far from, like I said, like 200 feet from where you are, good distance from where you are, a nondescript house. And he's like looking at it, but not at the house, even though he's pointing at the house, he's kind of like looking above it. Like he's a vortex.
So it's like 200 feet away. Is there windows or anything, or is it like can we see windows from here?
Honestly, it's so dark, it's kind of hard to make out those kind of things from as far away as you are.
All right. So I'm gonna look at Joseph and go, you're faster and you're quieter than we are. Meet us there. And I'm gonna grab Halen and I'm gonna dimension door to the house.
Beautiful. Just get yourself to the house. And so as soon as you can plop that in chat if you want. To grab him, you're able to jump that distance to stand directly in front of the door. And as you stand directly in front of the door, you guys are standing there, and you can see he's kind of like jarred from the sudden jump that you did to him. But he's looking at it, he's like, it's inside there. You should see it. And he starts reaching out towards the doorknob itself, to grab the doorknob. As he reaches out to grab the doorknob of the door, do me a favor, roll me a perception check.
Okay. Ah!
You don't notice anything.
I'm not Tesh!
Sure. Rod. Crikey.
Crikey.
So you are sorry, Jake. You are
Sorry, Tesh.
Completely. But he's from more West Coast than Jake is, so he's a bit more crikey. He's a bit more in the Middlelands. So you were completely caught off guard by the sudden slamming of a crossbow bolt in the door directly in front of you. Like it's like completely catches you off guard as he's reaching out to grab the doorknob. It's all like, boom! It catches the And like you look back behind you and you see it's actually the person that has the crossbow in hand is actually Jocelyn, do the best he can trying to run to get his way to you. But as he's running, getting his way towards you, he uses, I think it's called Knight's Move, the spell that literally allows you allows you to kind of like make steps forward and do quick little junts. Take a step forward, quick little junts, almost like a misty step sort of a thing, but like multiple little misty steps as he goes, trying to get his way over to where you are. Paul had put away his sword, pulled out a crossbow, and fired it to like distract you and stop you from grabbing the fucking door handle. And literally, it does stop you, completely catch you off guard, scares you. Doesn't have as much of effect on Halen. I'd
grab him. If it clearly Jocelyn's trying to tell us something, maybe there's a threat in there or something. So I will grab Halen's arm and I'll say, wait.
Tesh, can you roll me a reflex save?
That would be a dex save.
You try to grab Halen's arm, but you do it too late. And Halen actually grabs the handle. Unfortunately, the still use a type of defense that you're not too incredibly familiar with. They're able to take things like, say, static electricity, supercharge it, and place it onto conductors. And that is, of course, what he grabs. Two things happen. First of all,
Tesla coil at this point. It's just like arcs of electricity coming out of his body.
Are you ready? Not that bad. That's not terrible. Like actually, because he's not very tough, so that actually should drop him because he's not a particularly tough person, right? But because he's no training, like you actually have a decent amount of health because you actually have field experience, right? So that should be enough to drop him. However, luckily for him, literally as he's doing that, once again, still trying to run and get his way there close in the gap, Jocelyn's able to get close enough to kind of finish one of the spells, as we discussed beforehand, called Blood for Blood, where he literally finishes an incantation that allows him to kind of like share his blood with Halen's, because he had taken small little bits of it beforehand prior to you guys leaving the boat, prior to you guys even leaving the docks to get here, allowing him to cast a spell to take half of that for Halen. So Halen does take 10 points of electrical damage as he gets shocked from this. And you can see that it literally not only shocks his arm, but actually throws him back several feet, knocking him onto his ass as it kind of like breaks his concentration on the spell he was on before. And he kind of looks at you kind of like dazzled, confused, hurt, and not sure what's going on. His hair kind of on end, and a little bit of smoke coming off of him.
Halen, are you okay?
I was, oh, my arm's tingling, my heart. You should see it. Oh, I gotta show you what it is.
I kind of like adjust him so we're looking face to face, and I go, you have to remember, these creatures are out to kill us. You can't just go into it. You can't just walk in anywhere.
He nods. Jocelyn kind of walks up, and as he like looks down at him, he's like, idiot. And he gives him like a side foot kind of kick towards his hip. So not like an actual kick, but kind of like a swipe by kick, kind of like brushing him. Like he's like, idiot. And he like brushes his hip, kind of like none so friendly, but not damaging hit onto him. And I imagine you reach down, kind of like help Halen back up.
Yeah, I'll help him up.
He extends to the side, and he goes over and he quickly tugs his sword back out, and he tosses out the handle really quickly just to make sure if there's any additional static charge that's there that's kind of dispersed. So he hits the thing. It does kind of get stuck to the handle for a second, but then drops, giving you the impression that it wasn't like a little static charge left, but not so much of a send the sword going flying or anything like that, right? He does pick the sword back up gingerly. Again, he has gloved hands, and just kind of like, throws it back into the sheath. As he does so, he kind of like grabs the handle and says, on guard again, like looking to you to like make sure that you're prepared. And he grabs the handle of the door, looking to open it for you to be prepared to do what you need to do next. What do you do?
I prepare. I mean, this isn't a huge building, right?
No, it's not particularly.
So I prepare a firebolt just in case.
Well, you can say I prepared an attack spell and make you prepare exactly what specific spell.
Yeah, I prepare a attack spell.
Sure. So also,
my tip gets hot.
You open up the door, and so he opens up the door, swings it open, giving you a snapshot moment to be able to look inside. You roll a perception check.
That's about right. That's about right. Yep. All right. So what do I not see? Is there air in this room?
You just see a black void. You just see an empty bag of holes. Like, oh god. So anyways, so what you actually see when you open up that door, there are things that you don't see. Of course, I'll get to that momentarily. What you actually do see as soon as you open up that door is something that kind of catches you off guard for a second. But only a second. You see Syl that look like children. And the reason why this catches you off guard for a second is Syl can't reproduce children. They're abominations. They're not actual people. They don't have children. You've heard of these studies before, and you've read about them before, and certainly brushed up in your reading prior to coming on this operation, correct? So they don't reproduce children. Actually, you're not entirely sure how it is that Syl reproduce one another, so on and so forth, but you know that they can't have kids, right? But when the door is opened up, you do see that there are children inside there that look like Syl. You of course had your attack spell at the ready. You're not able to see, like, you know that you see that you think 2 or 3 of them that are there, but you're not entirely sure how many there are. Attack spell at the ready, you see 2 or 3 of these abomination looking things. What do you do?
I mean, for a second, I think they're. Let me do this for me real quick. Is it gonna roll it? There you go. Oh, it does it twice now. All right, so a 12. All right, so for a second I go children, and then I think about it and I think abominations can't reproduce. This must be an illusion. So what I'll do is I will do Agonazar's Scorcher, just because I can do a wide space with it, and I hold out my hands. This time he doesn't actually use the wand. He holds out his hands, and the fire bursts out for him in a straight line, right down the middle of the room.
Beautiful. And are you also doing that your bursty thing on that one as well? Your other ability?
I can't. I only have one. I have to counterspell something or
Once
dispel magic.
Oh, wait, hold on. You can store a maximum number of power surges per day equal to your intelligence modifier. Whenever you finish rolling, your number resists to 1 whenever you successfully end a spell with the spell magic account. God.
Yeah. So I only had that one until I counterspell or dispel something.
Beautiful. Nope, you're fine. I misunderstood that. My apologies. So, so you're able to do that, and you deal. So you blast forward this blast of fire, and what does happen is you light up the room. Is you see that there wasn't only 2 or 3. There was actually 5 of them in there, and they're all actually caught in this blast that's in front of you. So actually, you end up frying all of them. But you end up. Do you see off to the side? Is there was one other inside the room as well that wasn't a child? It was clearly an adult one. It was clearly a full-size Syl, and they are not happy with the shit that they just fucking saw take place. I need you to click on your mini and roll initiative, please.
Oh, rolls! Oh no!
Okay. It's funny. I actually rolled horribly as well. So actually, the first person that's able to act in this scenario is actually going to be what's his face? What's his name?
Josen or
Josen?
Halen?
Thank you, Josen. Halen's not gonna act. Josen is the first one to act. So what Josen actually does, he'd already did blood for blood, took a bit of electrical damage from actually nameless damage for him from Fucknet over there. Josen's actually going to push past you, push his way into the room, sword out at the ready, and just immediately just does an attack at the guy. Sure. I'm going to do this right here, attacking this Yushi McGee. We're going to do number of attacks is going to be...
So I had a question. You said that they are not happy what they just saw. Does that show? Do they look pissed off? Because they're normally emotionless.
Oh, my apologies. I'll describe that in 1 second. So I meant not emotionless in their expression. I meant kind of like, but I'll describe it in a second. So he actually does attack. It hits the Syl that's standing there, but the Syl itself actually was pretty darn good at keeping itself a bit away from the attack, kind of like seeing the attack coming before it does. He's able to kind of step to the side. There's like a table there, like a workbench that's there. Literally just is able to bend down almost in half and step around and underneath one of the legs of the workbench, allowing the sword to just barely clip them and kind of get embedded into the workbench for a second, but doesn't actually hit them too hard. They come stepping around the other side. It's Laszlo's turn next.
So Laszlo will just kind of yell out, be like, "Don't try to play your tricks and your illusions on me," and I'll cast magic missile on them.
Okay, so you obviously don't miss with this one.
That's just 1. So, and it gets, I think you get 3, right? On your first level.
Second level. What slot did you use?
Yep, 3 glowing. It was first level.
Oh, that's right.
You
5
get
is a little different.
glowing dots. Yep. So I didn't mean to do that last one.
Yep. So it's 12 points of damage. You actually fucked this guy's day up with that right there. On top of what he did beforehand, with that right there, you fucked this guy's day up considerably, right? So so to describe what you had seen beforehand, actually roll me a insight check, and I'll do everything all at once.
Okay. 15.
So, with an insight check of 15, you were actually able to look at the so when the reaction that you saw, it was you once again you saw something in the eyes really quickly. Like the eyes went like a bit wider, just like a little bit for a moment when that happened as they looked. Maybe it was surprise, maybe it was fear, maybe it was disgust, shock, but who knows what it is. But for a moment, you swore you saw emotion like in its eyes for just a second. But it was mostly the head snapping down, looking back, snapping down, looking back, and then like you can clearly see falling into an aggressive motion. For what it was doing. And then you say those words, "Don't try to play your tricks on me, abomination," or whatever the word you had just said was. And it responds and says, "No tricks, you murderer!" And its voice actually, it says, "No tricks, you murderer." As its voice has a little bit of force to it, but again, not like my first enunciation. Sorry, the first time had too much tone to it. The second time it was a lot more mellowed out, right? So it's, again, it has a bit more force to it, but doesn't have like that kind of overt kind of tone to it, especially for a gnome, right? So it's kind of like that muted, but it says, "No tricks, you murderer." And then it's going to be the creature's turn, and they're actually going to attack backwards. You can actually see that what they end up doing as their defense, they actually don't. They go to defend. You can see them grab at something on the table overhead, and then they grab it and they're looking at you with like force, like they're going to do something aggressive. And then they kind of like look down at their hands, and then just like drop whatever it was that they were holding, and they just go over to the charred bodies that are on the ground, and just kind of like kneel down before them, and like sit amongst them, and just kind of grabs as many as it can in its arms, like 3 of them, and just like hold them close, and just kind of like leans in towards them.
That's
It's Jocelyn's turn next.
Yeah. Would it, Laszlo would be confused, so he would just be like, "What's going on? Why isn't it attacking?"
Jocelyn sees this happen, sees an opportunity as it kind of like grabs down and grabs these 3. As it like pulls them close, holding them, Jocelyn takes the sword and just shoves it into the creature's back near the spine, and just kind of like shoves it in, pulls it out, and then does like another one more time just to make sure that the creature is dead. Pulls it out again, then cleans its blade off on its clothes, sheaths the sword. Sorry, no, it doesn't sheath the sword, and then immediately gives you that like look, affirmative look, gives you like a nod, like the room's clear, and then moves back out of the room to stands guard outside the door.
I look down at the body. Is this creature cradling?
You can't quite tell if it's male or female because the way that they dress, and again, so
are they?
Sure, you can check, but
no, I'm not gonna. That's a little weird.
Yeah. So are they the way they clearly were like cradling, and then they died, cradling.
But so I look at the child, and the thought comes to me like, well, wait, if it was an illusion, and I walk over and I touch it to see if it disperses or changes.
Doesn't. The only thing that disperses is some of its clothing and a bit of its flesh, or where you touch it, is so charred that some ash breaks off of it. Other than that, it's still there.
So I'm kind of quiet for a moment, and then
Halen makes his way into the room.
Yeah.
And looks across the room and says, "I wonder if that's how they do it." Ugh.
What do you mean?
This room is the vortex. I can see it. This is where the magics happen. This is where they twist and bend things to their will. I think those are children. I think they stole children. I think they converted them.
Can I do any type of check to see if any of them didn't look Sill, right? Looked like maybe in the process, or just off, like if there was something like a transformation in the process.
Yeah, you can actually go over there and check them out. Do an investigation. And advantage if you want to spend time, but I imagine you're not like spending.
No. Yeah. 12. Because
guys, he's gonna seriously need some luck dice when the campaign gets going. He's really gonna need.
This is bad. Like, oh, all right.
Other PCs don't use luck dice. Just let him use them. So, anyways, you looking down. Honestly, you don't see any signs of them being not Sill. You don't see any signs of them being half Sill. You don't see they are 100% Sill, just smaller and less developed, just like a child would be.
I don't know, Halen. This is odd. These look like children. Like, not. But yeah, we got a job to do. Did you see artifacts? Do you see any?
We do. And he holds up the crystal, and he starts casting that spell again. And this time you can see he kind of like swoons for a second, but then he kind of like regains his footing and looks around with a bit of an awe. This is it. This is the room. This is where they distort the magics. This is where they remove everything. You need to see it. You need to see what I see. And then he kind of goes over and he like kind of reaches out and grabs your hands, because he can see, but it's almost like he's not seeing right. He's seeing kind of off, but he's not like stumbling around a drunk like he was before. He's not completely swooned like he was before. Takes your hand and places it on the crystal and helps you to attune to it the way he does. You swoon and get dizzy and whatnot, and you're never going to fully clear your head the way that he's able to do so, because he's trained in this again. But you can see the magics as well. You can see them. They are different. They are very different to the kind of like auras they give off. You have different types of auras than you've ever seen before, and the auras themselves almost like intermix with one another. Whereas like as far as you understand the way the magic goes through the Arcane Congress's teachings, there's very regimented this school, this school, this school, this school, this school that can actually work in unison with one another. But this is like you can see the magic of this school and the magic of this school, but they're kind of like they're almost like halfway between the two of them. It's like a strange thing that you've never seen before. Again, like a twisted understanding of magic, and you can imagine that's because they're literally taking magics from these other cultures, these other people, your people even, and they're literally bending them to their abomination like will. Do me a favor as you're actually spending time investigating this area. And this time you're actually going to spend time doing it, because this is literally what you're here for. There's still rumbles and flashes going off in the distance as they're causing distractions. Could you actually roll me an Arcana check with advantage as you're spending your time detecting this stuff and working with him?
I also want to do like I don't know, knowledge or anything like that. That do I see damage to the weave?
Do you see what
Like
was that?
do I see any type of damage to the weave? What we've always been taught, like the mixing of the magics and then becoming volatile. Can I like do any kind of check for that as well?
You're gonna do that with the same check. Well, kind of all at once. Oh, thank God! I was afraid for a second there. So
yeah, I know.
The 26
So
actually,
good.
you're actually gonna learn a lot, Josh. Excuse me. With 26, you learn that there's no damage to the weave whatsoever, to whatever you want to call the amalgamations of magics that exist inside this world. No damage to that whatsoever. What you do know, however, is that these magics actually do not seem twisted. As a matter of fact, the tools that you see around you, the purpose of those tools, as far as you can understand, and so you're understanding the magics as you're studying them, these don't seem like these are magics that have been altered. Actually, as a matter of fact, everything here seems like things that have been fabricated. Like they've actually created these items. They've created these magics. They've done this themselves. No changes, but originals.
So this is their own magic.
This is likely their workshop.
Or
Whatever they
okay.
create here. These crystals that are sitting there that have magic.
Oh, I see what you're
on
saying.
the
Okay.
surface.
All right. I
Magics-
see.
So again, these magics aren't easily readable, like how you would usually detect magic. When he brought you to this attuning, you don't see magic existing within the crystals, but not necessarily outside of them. You know?
All right. So I'll just start with Halen's help. Just start grabbing the crystals and grabbing anything that is is showing this ability, showing this magics, and just toss them in our bags. Yeah.
As this is happening, Jocelyn gives you guys a warning. He looks back and says, "The rumblings in the distance, they've been gone for some time now. The battle must be over. We must be retreating, which means that we must retreat. Are you nearly done with your task?"
Are we? Like, we given this amount of time with
So you can imagine there is you looked around, you grabbed a couple of items, whatever it is that you say have this kind of like altered magic or whatever to it, this fabricated magic, whatever to it, which again is a little bit different than you've ever been taught. You've been taught they can't create magics; they only alter things that previously exist, because to create something requires a degree of sapience that these creatures lack, right?
creativity.
Yeah, exactly. So he looks to you, and again, it's one of those things like you want more time. You want more time to continue grabbing things, studying things, so on and so forth. But he's giving you that look that says, "Yeah, done."
Just we need a little bit more time. This is why we're here. The more we can grab, the more we can study, the more we could prevent any of the things that happen to the ships and stuff and
Fine.
the twist.
Make me so I can't be seen.
Okay, I'll walk over. My detect magic's gonna fade,
That's
but
good, 'cause
I won't.
You're getting it from Halen now, so you're fine.
Yeah. So I'll cast invisibility on him.
So you cast invisibility on him, so he gets invisible, and you can see him stern and aggravated as you do it. And he goes over and he shuts the door behind him as he steps outside of the building.
Yeah. So while we're grabbing it, I'll actually stop for a little bit and I'll look at Halen. I go, Halen, could creatures make these type of tools?
He looks at you and he goes, "Yeah, I don't know where they got these things from, but they certainly did a number on them. Do you see this?" And he literally like passes his hand through an aura, and you see the way it's like swirling and everything through it. Almost looks like it's like dancing or reacting to his hand passing through it. Auras are supposed to be metaphysical. It's just something you can pass your hand through, but it stays kind of like light, right? Like you're not really disrupting light, right? But it almost gets disrupted by his hand passing through it, much like you would imagine light pass through smoke. You know what I mean? Like you wave your hand over smoke and you see it swirling and acting differently, right? God? I said smoke, but you know what I mean, like dust.
Yeah. So I looked at Halen. I go, Halen, look at this room. They made these things. This is a manufacturing building.
No, it's not manufactured. That's impossible. They can't create things. They just distort them. They probably just kept their hands on things that we don't know yet. Think about where they are. Who lived here before?
This is. I think we don't understand something about their magics. There's something we're missing.
He shakes his head and goes, "What's the matter with you?" And he points at the corpses of the children that are over there. Do you see what they're doing to our people? Do you see what they're doing to them? These disgusting, emotionless, these abominations. They can't do this sort of a thing. They're horrible and they need to be destroyed. We need to know how to do it. And knowing how it is that they twist their magics will allow us to learn how to twist it back.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. They don't look like gnomes. They don't look like they were gnomes being twisted.
Because they're twisted. And he kind of gives you like what's the matter with you? And then he goes over and grabs other objects and touches them. What's kind of funny actually is he's grabbing these objects is that you went over and just immediately started grabbing them, putting them in the pack like you said beforehand and told him to do so. And it's funny because at first he actually made sure he had gloves on and was like grabbing a rag to move them because he himself is like so like volatilely disgusted by what it is that they are. He didn't even want to touch them. Whereas your character's like, yeah, whatever, just you know, but he's also new to researching this kind of a thing. So he has this kind of like aversion towards it. But he's doing what you tell him to do. Maybe if he was a little bit more helpful at the beginning, he wouldn't need more time now, but nonetheless. What is it you're trying to do with this additional extra time aside from the quick little chat?
We just collect more. He just had to take that moment. He's really confused right now on what's going on. He's seeing things that are different than the facts he was always taught.
Yeah.
So he'll snap out of it and he's like, you're right. And he's doing that. I also want to take a second and look at the children and the bodies. Are they emanating any type of auras?
It's kind of one of those things where you imagine like while he's distracted, grabs like, get some of those samples over there. And he goes over and starts grabbing at them. You actually kind of like go over and you look back, and I imagine you're not touching the corpses necessarily. But
No.
Looking over and like seeing if they're giving off any emanation. They're not.
Okay. Which doesn't make sense.
Of course, the residual magics of a Agnesar Scorcher.
Yeah, I imagine my magic looks very structured. It's like Greek Roman statues versus like a druidic or an Irish druid circle or whatever. Yeah, Celtic circle. So I take a note of that, and I'm just saying to myself, if they were being transformed, they would have some kind of magic on them, but we don't have time. And I'm starting to freak out.
Only about like 5.5 minutes or so past that when you bought yourself for additional time, when finally the door kind of like opens up very quickly, you hear steps through, we don't see any, and then closes quickly, but not with a snap. It closes, stops, very quietly closes that last little bit, right? And you hear the voice turn around and say, "They're in the town. We are now going to be surrounded very soon. We need to get out of here, and we're not going to be able to necessarily fight our ways out. Ends this damn spell."
Sure. I drop visibility.
So you finally see him standing there. He's actually holding something in his hand. He's holding a bit of a ring that's in there beforehand. And he says, "This ring that I'm holding here, it was given to me before, an artifact that was found in the past. I was told to use it to get us out of here. The stone has been passed through and anchored us somewhere onto the ship that, anchored us back into the rendezvous point after the task. If all of us grab onto this and pass the stone again, we will actually all be teleported immediately there. We need to do that now. We are going to get caught. But before we do that, we have one more task." And actually reaches into his bag and he pulls out a small chest-looking thing that's sitting there. And he hands it to you. You can immediately see, because again you have detect magic put on you by Halen, that this thing is brimming with a lot of magic.
Can I tell the school?
Rolling an Arcana check. So it happens to be your understudy. You can see that this thing is brimming with a ton of that enchantment type of magics inside there. A ton of it. It's just kind of like boiling inside of it. And we're not talking like a low tier either. We're talking about like a relatively high tier is sitting inside of it. Savant somewhere in there, you believe. So some powerful magics.
Yeah, so I look at it and I go,
these are like volatile. Go ahead.
I look at it and I go, this is dangerous.
He says, "No, this is dangerous," gesturing with his like sword hands towards the room that you're in. "And it needs to be ended." And he says, "Put it somewhere. I was told that something to do with this place, the way that amplify his magic. It's gonna make it work for you.
All right, I'll look to like I would assume their workbench or like whatever their center of their crafting operation would be, if it's a forge or a workbench or anything like that. I'll put it on that and I'll say, okay, this seems to be the focal point of their work, of their crafting.
He looks at you and says, "What's the most powerful invocation you know?"
Pretty sure. I can create a rather large wall of fire.
He nods and looks at you and says, as he holds out the ring and tells and gestures for Halen to come over and grab it, he says, "Good. You need to put a wall of fire on that thing."
But that would be mixing the schools. We're not allowed to do that. That could damage the weave.
You need to put a wall of fire on that.
No, you don't understand. That's against the laws. We're not allowed to mix magics.
We have been given orders.
What? Okay.
And
orders.
So, like you said, you put that there. I imagine you make your way, grab up the pack, stuff that you have.
Yeah.
And you make
grab up the pack, and I he wants us all to have one hand on it, so I put my hand on it, and I look at it and I go, this is wrong, and I say that the entire time as I open the book and I'll read the incantation so that you can almost see like a small, almost like a fuse running along the ground in the direction towards the thing, and I'll put my hand on it and I go, this is wrong. And I snap my finger, and then the wall starts to bloom up and head and hit the object directly.
Roll me a perception check.
14.
As you snap your finger, you hear noises coming from outside the door. It sounds like chatter, like talking. You quickly turn your head towards that, like literally as you're like saying this is wrong. You hear the noises. You look back behind you. You see through the window that there are a bunch of Sill making their way through the streets. A bunch of Sill that are there, walking the way back into the town. Now, clearly there must have been a retreat or whatever happened on the other side, along the beaches. But these Sill aren't just like walking their way there. This is wrong. Literally, as you snap, you're kind of like looking that way. You see the Sill that are there, and you can see that not only are they walking back into the area kind of in groups, you see that actually amongst those groups, some of them are lying still, being held by others, maybe even dead, being carried back, returned from the field of battle.
That doesn't make sense. Okay.
And literally, as you're kind of like looking back at, this is wrong. You look back and you see that. You literally feel the fire erupting up behind you, and all of a sudden you kind of like feel a quick little like emanation happen. You can almost feel a change in the magics of the world around you.
Can I still see the magics at this moment?
So you can, again, it's just because of how powerful this is. You can kind of like feel the heat or whatever.
Oh yeah, okay.
The detect magic's kind of off. You kind of like feel that happening, and then all of a sudden you feel this like sickening pull, almost like somebody literally grabs you by the core of who you are and pulls you down to the ground with this huge, immense, like jump up and gravitational pull. As literally that stones pass through there, out of your sight, but done by him, and you're pulled through, and all of a sudden you like hit the ground with like force. As all of a sudden you like teleport immediately to an area a good bit from where you are. As a matter of fact, onto a ship. Not one of the ships that you were on beforehand, but a different ship. You imagine one that was specifically designed for people to rendezvous back at. Intentionally, you guys as well. You appear onto that ship that's there, and you actually appear there, and kind of like it's like a sickening feeling as it happens. And then all of a sudden, you look over towards like kind of gaining your bearings of where you are, and you see like a distance from where you are, where the beaches are that you're a good bit, like I said, bit away. The sun's coming up on the horizon as you're kind of pulling yourself away. And then you start to see something happen. Quickly, there's a bit of a flash and a wave of magic that happens off in the distance. Do me a favor, roll me a dexterity save.
I don't want to. No, this is going to be bad.
Roll me a constitution save.
Oh, shit. All right. Oh!
There is a huge flash, of extremely bright light that comes through and immediately burns your eyes, leaving you completely looking at seeing just this extremely bright light. Everything's just like piercing. Sometimes like when you're watching TV, then it cuts like a commercial at the end of a movie, and it's that fucking obnoxious pure white color that burns the soul into like every part of your being. That happens to you, except it doesn't end. And then there's a huge rush of energy that literally lifts you off of where you are, throws you backwards, and slams you into the other side of the ship. And then shortly after that, a huge boom, and you can feel the entire ship rocking as somebody rushes over and grabs you and tries to hold you from being thrown overboard, so on and so forth. And the whole time that this happens, that bright white that you see never ends. Shortly after that, you actually lose consciousness from the burst and everything that happens, so on and so forth. You eventually regain consciousness sometime after that. You don't know how long it is afterwards. But what you do know is that you were inside of a medical bay back at the somewhere in Eustis. You're inside of like a bit of a hospital, my apologies, where you're lying on a bed and everything seems to be kind of clean and around you. You're finally able to like see everything. It's super bright at
Oh, thank
first,
God.
but then you're able to see it's super bright at first. But the reason why it's super incredibly bright is because of a light that's kind of like shining down on you. You blink a few times, you're able to move and look around, and you see that you're not the only person in the room. There's a couple of the gnomes in the room as well. And strangely enough, you also see a Hafue in the room that's with you. And much like you imagine Hafue fashion, their hair is an assortment of colors, purples, yellows, and greens. Their skin also has like tons of tribal symbols marked all over it, magically imprinted for them. Their eyes themselves don't have normal like pupils. Their eyes themselves almost have like this fun little contact lenses you can put on, almost looks like shark teeth around the edges of their eyes, giving them this like really cool looking. But the pupil and iris themselves are also like this like bright golden color. Very, very strange looking, but the clothing that they're wearing is very clean and white, as you can see all the gnomes around you are wearing as well. Clearly this is some sort of operating room, magical operating room that they have going on. You can blink and look around, and you can see that they were having a conversation. You just gained consciousness, so you didn't quite hear what they say, but one of them notices you immediately afterwards. A gnome comes over and says, Laszlo, can you see me?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Where are we? The sill. But are we safe?
Laszlo, you're safe. You're definitely safe. You can see me though. How many fingers am I holding up?
3.
He looks over at the Hafue and says, I have to say, it was brilliant, and you did it. Thank you. You're able to save him. And he looks to you and says, the savant would be very pleased with the results. We'll go and get her immediately for you. And he will actually leave the room, as well as the other gnomes will, leaving just behind the Hafue that's there. The Hafue is going to kind of like go over to you and start kind of like checking vitals. Kind of goes over and grabs like checks in and sees what your pulse is. Goes over and literally grabs like you can imagine like a little bit of a wand that has a bright light at the end of it and like waves light in front of your eyes, so on and so forth, and starts like looking down at you and checking you out. Do you say anything or do anything?
Yeah, I would look at him and I would say, do you come from the forest?
They look at you and they nod slightly, and then they kind of go back to what they're doing, checking out the vitals.
Are there a lot of beasts there?
He nods.
Did the beast ever protect the injured or bring back the dead to their den?
He nods, then thinks, then kind of like thinks a little bit more, and like shrugs, and then kind of looks at you, gives you that look like, it depends, but doesn't say anything.
Okay. And I just wait in thought.
Yep. Pass when eventually Savant comes in herself. Open my notes again. Savant Loxam comes in herself, and when she comes in, she looks down at you, and as she looks at you, you can see that the look in her eyes is different than it's ever been beforehand. There's almost a bit of a pity to her as she looks at you. But she, at the same time, she says, "You're well."
I believe so.
I'm glad to hear that, Laszlo. For a little while there, we weren't sure if you were going to recover correctly.
What happened to my eyes? I don't remember. Just a bright light. That's all I remember.
You looked directly at the blast, and so it had an effect on you. Unfortunately, you're the only one that looked directly at the blast of what happened there, because of the way it is because of the way that they distort magics. It caused an eruption. Otherwise, shouldn't have happened. A huge eruption, a cloud, massive mushroom would arise overhead. If it wasn't horrifying, if it wasn't devastating, it would be beautiful and glorious. Nonetheless, you looked at the blast, and it destroyed your eyes. You've been magically kept into a coma for some time, as we worked on you. We reached out to all the physicians that we had available. They called in a favor. Luckily for you, he came. We were able to save your sight, but we weren't able to save your eyes.
What do you mean? I can see.
The compatibility, because of their origin, because of what it was that created them, meant that there is a degree of compatibility between the two of you. That and a bit of brilliance of my own, utilizing what it is that I happen to focus on, the necromancy. We were able to preserve a set of eyes from one that, well, came aboard our ship. Unfortunately, she reaches over and grabs a mirror and hands it to you.
Oh no, Scott, you're a dick.
You're all the daddy one.
I know. I look in the mirror to see my abomination of eyeballs.
Jet black, pure black eyes, but otherwise perfectly gnomish face.
This is horrifying. So he sees these eyes, and just for flavor, if you don't mind, could they be the same color as the one that cradled?
Oh, yeah, my apologies. Yeah. Go ahead. Yep.
That cradled the child in the room.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
And so I look at that, and that's all I can think about. That's all I can think about looking in my own eyes, I'm confused.
Yeah. Your eyes, and there's like a horrified look on your face as you're staring there in your internal. And she eventually breaks aside and says, "I understand. The idea of having an abomination living within you is disturbing, but your abilities, the significance that you're going to have for the Arcane Congress is too great. You couldn't pass the opportunity. You couldn't take away from you what you need to continue doing your tasks for the greater good. Fortunately for us, there are magics that can be used. The Hufue are quite adept at permanently manipulating the way that things look. We can change them. We can make them look as they did before. I have looked into your eyes many times. I know exactly what they looked like beforehand. We can restore them the way that they're supposed to look, even if only superficially. Others don't have to see what you see now. Others don't have to stare into the horror. I'm sure you need time to think about this, but it is an option that exists.
Just like my hands. That's the solution.
There are always solutions to your problems.
I look to her like dead on with my face, like my eyes, and I look at her and go.
Cringes ever so slightly when you look at her because you can see the eyes of abomination.
I broke the law.
You've done nothing wrong, and please, you might be a little bit confused. It has been 2 months since that incident. The dreams that you've had, the number of times you've had to be sedated. Deep slumber is not an easy spell to survive through that many times.
Yes, sir. Yes, Servant. Thank you for your aid.
When she sees that you're not going to give an answer now, she says, "My friend here intends to leave in a few days' time. The procedure itself only lasts a few hours. If you decide, which I suggest that you do, he will do the procedure for you. You don't have to carry all of your scars. Some of them you can carry within. They don't have to be worn on your face." And she'll actually reach out and kind of like grab your hand. You've never had a moment of affection from her before. She grabs your hand and actually gives it a little bit of a squeeze, like kind of like a reassuring squeeze. Her hand, first time you've ever touched it, it's cold to the touch. But nonetheless, she gives it a reassuring squeeze and says to you, "Nonetheless, paperwork is in order. Within a year's time, you will receive your much-deserved promotion." And then she says it kind of like quietly, like so that like the Hafue can't hear it. And then we'll turn and leave the room. The Hafue looks at you and just gives you like a, and then we'll turn and follow it as well.
Is there anyone else in the room? Is my effects in the room?
Funny enough, actually, yeah, they've been there. It's kept for you as well as many other things. There are a lot of flowers, some of them a little bit older that should probably be removed, others that are like well into their bloom, others that clearly got delivered earlier today, even that like sharp, beautiful, like floral kind of scent inside the room. There's like cards that were left there for you, as well as like other little things and gifts, like little trinkets, like say a coin that, you know, you've seen this kind of coin before. You used to play with it when you were a kid. It's a coin that if you like rub it, make it really warm in your hands, it kind of like rubs away the metal a little bit and makes it so it kind of like takes into like a shape. Imagine like the toys that kids get where it's like a dinosaur egg that you kind of like wash it away, and it, you know, it's things like that where it's like almost like a brittle kind of like a very loose mat, but like magic kind of put it on there. So little cute little trinket things that are, but things that are meant to be like, "Hey buddy, get better."
Yeah, pity gifts.
Yeah. Wow. Is that what you say when family gives you gifts in the hospital?
Give me money. I live in America. Give me money if I'm in the hospital.
Trumps all.
Yeah. Except for Trump cards. You don't need them. Obviously, you don't need them. I'm just so it's racing through his mind right now, especially when she touched him. It kind of realization came over to him. Everything about her is fake. Her hands were cold. She probably did the same thing that she's trying to get me to do, to kill my hands so that they don't sweat as much. She only shows emotion when I broke the law, because I did break the law. I know it. I know what was in that box. I know what the power level, and I mixed those two schools. And yet now that's okay. And he's kind of freaking out a little bit, and he just needs air. So he'll get up, and if there's no one that's going to stop him, he'll get dressed and make his way to go outside.
Nobody stops you at all, actually. So again, the way the hospitals work here aren't quite the same that hospitals work in like other worlds. It's not like there's tons of them that get carted in and stuff like that. No. This is actually specifically for the Arcane Congress, only for people of your like stature and whatnot. So it's actually kind of more like a doctor's office, like a clinic that you go to, right? And when you go walking out there, people give you like a smile and a nod, but you're walking around fully dressed and acting normal, so there's no reason for them to stop you or anything like that. And so just kind of
except for my eyes.
Except for your eyes, of course, right? So they give you like a smile and nod, and I suppose when they see your eyes, the fuck was that? You know, as you go walking by. But they've seen magical maladies before, so maybe it's just something that went wrong, you know?
So as I'm walking around, I'm just kind of wandering around because he's confused. I'm gonna cast Minor Illusion on my eyes. Just to make them not stand out so much.
Sure. And you're easily able to make your way out of the facility.
Yeah.
Just to bring you to your attention to where it is that you happen to be, you're actually in the capital of Eustace. And
how the heck do you say that? Shanti
Again, I learned it so long ago. I don't really care right now. We'll worry about it later on. I really have to pee, and it's almost 3 a.m. So you keep going.
All right. So I'm just walking around. Is that a river that runs?
Yes.
He'll make his way to the docks, and he'll look. Is that where it is? Oh, he did it to me. It's do. It hurts. He'll make his way to the docks, and he doesn't believe in anything anymore. So he just kind of wants to just get away.
You get to the docks, no problem. Nobody stops you. Nobody.
He
Capital's so densely populated, nobody knows who you are.
he sees if there's any like ships just heading inland. He just wants to get away.
Yeah, you can easily get aboard one. We're talking like leaving within the hour.
Okay, so he gets on, and he's just focusing on himself. He doesn't understand, and he's not okay being there. He doesn't know why, but he's not okay being there. And so yeah, he'll head over to where, like, just wherever it's going.
It brings you inland along the river. The river splits. It keeps to the south, splits again, keeps to the south again, and eventually actually dumps you in the middle of Galdaria in a town by the name of, I think it's Tevoin. Not too terribly far from the Galdarian capital of Peresk. And so I imagine from there you kind of dump out, and from there I imagine once again you kind of like hit the road again.
Yeah, he's just wondering. All this time that's going on, he's thinking. He's not really taking care of himself that great. Like, he's really distraught. He's like, this doesn't make sense. And he ends up just thinking, I need to know more about magic. I need to know more about the difference that there is in magic. Like, and the only people that he knows that are civilized, because the Sill can't be civilized. They can't. Like, is a Malta that is different than them. They have a different view of magic. So he kind of is heading there without thinking, without like focusing on it. He's kind of just like, I need to learn more. I need to see more of the world, because what I don't know what I know.
Okay, no, that's perfectly fine. Do I have that over here? 1 second. So one of the things that you eventually get as you're kind of like making your way over there, making your way downtown, is that you actually have the I have this written somewhere else. You actually have the ascending spell sent to you by an evoker. Is actually going to cast sending at you. And again, sending is not some small. Actually, it's 3rd level in this version. I think it's 5th level in a different version of the game. So 3rd level is what? Only a. Too many tabs open. Motherfucker. Where are you? I have too many tabs open. So is only a droid spell. So it's going to be cast your way, kind of like saying one of those like, Laszlo, where are you? You've disappeared from the capital. Nobody's able to find you. Please report back as soon as you can. And I imagine you choose not to respond to the sending.
No, he doesn't.
You can imagine that there probably are people trying to scry on you, trying to find out where you are, where you're going. Make me an intelligence check. You yourself are actually even able to detect. You can literally hear that almost like feedback kind of sounds that a scry gives when you're being watched. When you're being watched, you can almost hear it. You can almost like feel that prickling on the back of your neck presence. Sometimes they're watching you. Back in Congress, trying to see where you're going. One of the things that you notice as you're making your way into Malta, eventually you cross through the border, however it is that you get there to get to Malta, is that scrying gets less and less often. And actually, as you're making your way even further into the borders of Malta, it almost seems like they stop being able to scry at you, or just stop choosing to scry at you at this point. Scrying stops.
So I finally find a little bit of peace, like not in being viewed and watched.
Exactly. What do you do when you're in Malta?
I watch the people. I use detect magic to see if they're damaging the weave, like we are told.
No. Granted, they're working within the boundaries of how you've always understood magic, but very differently. I don't have that strict, rigid structure of 8 schools and some universal thing. Everything almost comes off as universal, with like hints of a school over here and hints of a school over there, but certainly not the strict, rigid, this is an evocation spell. It's like, no, it's a spell, but I guess it's uses evocation magic. Sometimes it actually will be a spell that almost seems like a, what's the word I'm looking for here? Sometimes there might be an evocation spell with a little bit of an enchantment mixed into it, which is frightening. But luckily, all the people that you see using this magic, they're all using tiers of like neophyte, maybe a droid tier magic. Certainly, you're not coming across any savants tier magics.
Yeah, so this kind of just opens his eyes. His dark eyes. He...
Laszlo, dark eyes.
Oh no, that's awesome. He comes to a resolution. He feels like his whole life the Arcane Congress has been lying to him. They don't know everything about magic like he's always thought. This isn't they're just not right. They break their own rules whenever they want. And what the hell even happened on that island? He knows he saw something that wasn't right. And so he comes to a resolution and goes to like the nearest guards and tells them that he is a peacekeeper and he wishes to meet the king.
Yeah, you're arrested,
Yeah,
detained,
I imagine.
questioned. That's not a quick thing either. It's like a multi-month thing.
Yeah.
As you continue to peacefully try to make your claim, try to make your calm claim towards speaking to the Elder King of the lands. But eventually, repeating yourself over and over again, being as kind and forthright in everything as you can, and passing every rigorous test they put against you. Attempts to see if you're like looking to lie or this, that. And of course, when they finally do acquiesce and allow you to meet with the king, it is under strict guard. They actually have Venators standing behind you. Two very high trained. We're talking not just Venators. These are the Venator savants, which are the highest tier of officer that exists inside their military. Venators being the branch of the military that specifically are mage hunters. These are people who have spent their entire lives training in every way to not only kill you the quickest and most efficient way possible, disrupt your magics as they're being cast, and also know how to pinpoint and find ways to attack you even just as you're starting to invoke a spell. Right? So these are people that can kill you, end your life very easily. Two of them standing behind you, spears in hand, prepared, because most Venators are trained with a spear. Whereas most soldiers are trained with axe or sword, right? So anyways, they stand by you. Even in the chamber, when you meet with the king, you have others that are nearby, others that are designed to defend against magics, any outbursts that might happen, other branches of the military. You don't really know them very well, because you didn't study this in your...
Well, they're supposed to fall. They're not
Correct.
supposed to be a thing anymore.
No, granted, that's not something that you. It's not something that you like. You just know that they're supposed to fall because like it's one of those things that they're clearly at war and they're not doing very well. You know what I mean? Also, they disrupt the rules of magic. So honestly, you're not giving them aid. That's what you know. But anyways, so they have all this standing there, and then you have the old king that's sitting there on the throne before you. This man is old. He's a human, and he's again old. Maybe his 80s. I don't know. He doesn't seem to be doing too well. Whatever the case may be. They've been at war for some time. I mean, honestly, Malta has been at war with Paradel for about 10 years now. And you know that recently, sometime in the past, at least before you lost consciousness, there's word that sometime in the past, like less than a year prior to that, apparently they somehow used magics to erect a huge wall of ice that is supposedly holding Paradel at bay between the lakes and their eastern border. You don't get too much into international politics, right? But that's something that would certainly catch your attention. Erecting a huge wall of ice. Imagine the amount of conjuration, evocation that would have to be applied to make that happen. That's insanity. Transmutation, so on and so forth. Whatever. Moving on. So, there you are, sitting before this Elder King. And when you're kind of like presented for him, of course he speaks first. And he says to you, Laszlo Herringer. Henniger. Laszlo Henniger. I have heard that for some months now you have wanted to speak to me. Through the pain and test that it has brought you through for this meeting to happen. Tell me, Laszlo, why would a member of the Arcane Congress, carrying the degree of colors that you carry, wants to kneel before my throne? Do you come carrying into the threats of your people? Do you come, once again, warning us of the dangers of ourselves and threatening the collapse that will happen to our society? Do you come to question my ability to rule and protect my people? Do you come threatening to starve my people? Because I, despite the fact that you've erased the minds of those around us, despite the fact that you've done what you can to alter people's perceptions of our meetings, I'm not so easily swayed. I remember what is said. I remember your threats. Tell me, Laszlo, why do you come before me? And why should I listen to what you have to say?
So Laszlo doesn't actually make eye contact with him right away. He's just staring at the floor, taking this on, and the weight of all of this, the travels. He's lost tons of weight at this point. He's probably almost a stick figure.
Literally about 13 months have passed since.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He's shaggy. His hair is much longer than he's usually ever keeps it, and he just collapses. He falls onto his knees and he starts crying. And he goes, because everything I know is a lie. And he holds out his spell book and he puts it in front of him and he goes, I learned, I studied, I was loyal. And he looks up at him with his solidly dark eyes. And he goes, and I became a murderer. I became fooled. And I was lied to. Everything I know is wrong. And I wish to make it right. I wish to put an end to the Arcane Congress. And your people can do that. You're the only ones, I think, that can. And I wish to aid you.
You can see that somebody's sitting to his side. A woman that is elegantly dressed, clearly a sorceress of sorts. She clearly was watching you intensely, like her kind of like looking, moving her face, kind of like studying you as you were saying these words. You could also imagine there's a degree of magic being used behind her, her studying you. She leans over and whispers something to the king, and he kind of like nods as she says, whatever it is she whispers to him, and says, I'm being advised that there is a degree of truth to what it is that you're telling me. You are not lying before me. You are honest and bearing yourself.
Yes.
Discovery. At what cost did you discover that?
And he just, he tries to speak, but a sob comes out, and he's just like, too high of a cost. Too high.
What? You wish to offer aid. Aid to a kingdom that's believed to be threatened to fall. I warn you, my people are strong, our will mighty, and our magic is robust. We will not fall. We will not fail. We will endure, and, dare I say, prosper in times to come. How do you believe that you can aid us, Congressman?
I'll tell you everything I know. I know of a weapon that, when used, can take out an entire island.
And how do I know I can trust Congressman, despite how honest he seems to be, despite the display he puts before me, despite all the experiences that have happened, I've had with them in the past?
I'll give you my life's work. And I just slide the book forward, and I'll say, it's yours. I'll never use their magics again.
He looks down at it and says, I do not need spells. I need knowledge. I need understanding, not weapons.
I can do that. It's one of my specialties in enchantment. Learning about the magics. Learning about histories.
So all I have is your word?
I'll hold out my hand and I'll hold out the wand actually and point it at the book and I'll
When you
pause.
hold the wand, you can imagine that the two Venators behind you,
Yeah.
shields come forward with a little notch on the shield. Spear drops down in front of it. They're aimed down at you. They're clearly ready to kill. On either side of you, there's the row of their protector mages that happen to be there. Literally kind of fall into a casting stance, get their hands ready. You can imagine they're beneath their breath, deep in their throat, starting to begin the incantation of dispels, counter spells, protections and whatnot that are getting there and whatnot. Everybody falls to guard, but the king, kind of almost predicting this is going to happen as he saw your motions, raises his hand, seemingly not afraid of you, seeming to be swayed by what it is that you're saying. He raises his hand to all of them, and it's kind of shaky, and it's old and hairy-knuckled and whatnot. As he raises his hand, and you can see that everybody just kind of like pauses, the entire room. If a feather farted, you would hear it. You know?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I pause for a second, just waiting for the sound waiting for everything to settle. And I go, I am no longer their weapon. I'll be whatever you need me to be. And I'll cast firebolts on the book. I'll cast fireball! No.
You know what's really weird is
What?
somewhere around when you made your intelligence check, it looks like OBS froze. So it's still picking up our voices, but it's not picking up the video anymore. I don't know why. Give me 1 second. Sorry.
Oh,
man.
that's nice.
Yeah, and I don't know why it's not picking it up anymore. This is really weird. Yeah, you're just smiling, and I'm just like got a weird look on my face. They can still hear us, they just can't see us. And since this update that happened with Windows, I don't know what's going on. It's been working the entire time up until when you made that intelligence check. Do me a favor, roll me a random d20 before we continue this. I know we're almost done, but oh god, that's frustrating. Okay, that popped up on there. It's literally just Zoom. So this could have been frozen from even before that, and I wasn't looking at OBS.
The video. Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry, everybody. I'm just realizing this now. I saw us moving earlier. I just have no idea when it froze. God, this update to
The Zoom, I know.
to Zoom is like really hurting us.
Yeah, it was. This is what was happening to me earlier.
Did it freeze your cameras before?
It did once, and then I had to redo it. I had to delete the assets and then put the new ones back on there and stuff like that.
Not worth it for me to do that right now, right?
Mhm.
I'm so sorry, everybody. I don't know how long this has been going on, but we'll just have this as an audio for now with a goofy little freeze frame, and we'll just deal with this later on. I'm gonna have to mention it in chat at some point. Sorry, updates happen, technical issues. It's just unfortunately what's happening with OBS and Windows and Zoom all updating at the same time and not communicating with one another because they don't care about content creators. Obviously, they care about their own program functioning, and then more updates to fix it. Let's continue on. Let's push through. You hold out your wands. You cast a spell.
I cast firebolt on the book to burn it, to destroy it.
You cast firebolt on the book. You destroy it, and it's one of those things where as it literally sits there, burns, the entire room's quiet until the burning goes low, and there's nothing but little ash, whatnot there. There's little sparks, green, red, blue, whatever it is that happens along the way. God, that's pissing me off that happened. I'm sorry, everybody. but so anyways, you always hate when you put out fucking shitty quality content, and we can't re-record this. It's over 2.5 hours long. So anyways, you literally burns and sparks and all that stuff, and eventually it burns down to just ash. And he looks at you after this like close to like 20 minutes happens and it burns down. After it's all done, he then looks at you. He's a very patient old man. He looks at you and he says, "You've proven that you're not lying to me, but I don't know whether or not others can trust you. You're welcome to stay as a guest in my kingdom. Maybe one day we can learn from one another. Maybe one day we can find how you may aid the crown. But until that day, accept my offer. Stay as a guest in my home."
Thank you.
And with that, we will actually end the session. We're going to do a quick hard out here because I'm sure you've been staring at our stupid faces for a long time, not moving. At least Josh doesn't look terrible. It's actually a pretty good freeze frame for him. Mine's pretty awful. So, either way. So, and I really have to pee. I've had to pee for over an hour now. So we're definitely going to hard out here. But before we go, Josh, could you do me a favor and tell everybody where they can find you, what's going on and whatnot? And then these videos are going to be presented in whatever order they're presented in. Go ahead.
So you can find me on UnfunnyOne. Soon I will be starting a Call of Cthulhu game. Check me out on Mondays. Thank you.
Yeah. What do you have a time frame for Zoom or no?
For Zoom.
For soon. Sorry.
Yeah. We plan on starting February 17th.
Cool. All right. February 17th. Perfect. That's today. Wow. Okay. Bye. That's the past. That's the past when this is being released. All right. That's funny. Bye, everybody. I suppose I'm going to go to our away screen, even though it doesn't matter. Yay. Yay.